Hey, Neil Patterson here. If you enjoy my stupid videos, if you enjoy my little comedy skits, if you enjoy my podcast, this is the best way. For only $5 a month, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Neil P. Neil P. Thank you in advance for getting me through 2021 and beyond. Love you, love you. Welcome to episode number 68, I believe, 68 of SUPcast. I started doing this in 2019. Now that I do the math, 2019 was like quite a number of years ago at this point. It's 2021, we're almost at 2022. So I'm thinking that my output should be greater than 67 episodes because, you know, some people like Steve-O started the podcast. I mean, granted, this is like an independent thing. This is a DIY thing. And I don't have a budget, and I don't have any sponsors, and I also am doing all the work, so I got pretty busy. And pretty much what happened with that, me being busy, is that once I got too busy, I had to prioritize some things like live shows. I prioritized live shows, and then this kind of waned a little bit. Yes, the podcast waned a little bit, but I'm trying to get back on the horse, and that's why today I have Mr. Alex Dontre. We're going to get into the pronunciation of his last name in this here episode of SUPcast. But it's my good friend Alex, a.k.a. The Hammer, the tour manager / drummer / old friend from the band Psychostick. And I've had Matt from Psychostick on the show. We've had Psychostick on the show. We did like kind of a gang type interview, and that was in December of 2019. And then I had Josh from Psychostick as well on the show. And now here we have Alex. Alex is he's a college professor, and I think he has a master's degree as well. So we're going to go into all this. He's a smart guy. The whole time he was in this band, this like kooky metal band, he was educating himself while on the road and wrote a book called Dichotomies, and we're going to go into that. In fact, I'm going to grab the book right now. And he also just released a new book. Well, this is his first book called Dichotomies, which you can get on Amazon, and you can get it at the Psychostick store. And this is Lessons from a College Life on Tour. I pretty much, these are stories of Alex Dontre, drummer of Psychostick, and his travels and getting a college degree while being in a touring rock band. So lots of stories and anecdotes, and in fact, Downtown Brown, the band that I'm in, makes it in there. A few anecdotes about us. Little stories. So you're going to want to check that out. And as far as what's going on in my realm right now, we're just ramping up for Christmas. Allie's candle business is exploding. So she has hired me and some of my music friends as employees for her candle business. So we're putting in hours, and then it's back to the catering company. And then also on December 11th, I'm singing for Reagan Youth, and we're opening for a band called Suicidal Tendencies in Dallas, Texas, at a place called Amplified Live on December 11th. So that's going to be wild. Opening for Suicidal Tendencies, and that happens next weekend. Crazy shit. Yeah. Did I ever think I would be in a band that was opening for Suicidal Tendencies? Because Downtown Brown certainly was never going to get that invite. Not a once. I mean, we've got invited to do some crazy shit, but I highly doubt Downtown Brown will ever get invited to open for Suicidal Tendencies. But Reagan Youth did. And the lineup is Reagan Youth, DOA from Canada, and TSOL, and Suicidal Tendencies. So it's like a fucking old school, hella crazy lineup. So imagine that. Imagine seeing that show, Reagan Youth, DOA, TSOL, and Suicidal Tendencies, all for the price of, I don't know, like $30 in Dallas, Texas. And in Texas, of all places, I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to Texas to sing for Reagan Youth, opening for Suicidal Tendencies. So life is fucking crazy. I'm going to send Dontre right now the email invite. And I'm doing this thing where I do a little intro. So yeah, welcome to SUPcast, episode number, I believe it's number 68, which means next episode will be number 69. And I'm going to try to do this more periodically because I have people paying on the Patreon for this podcast and for my other content. So it's time to get off my ass and be making stuff on a consistent basis, not just like when I feel like it, not just when I'm not busy. I have to make time. You have to make time for the podcast. So this is the new era going into 2022, and we're going to try to do one podcast a week and see where it goes. Because there's sometimes where I tell myself that no one gives a fuck about this. But then sometimes in my travels, I'll have people tell me, I listen to every episode of your podcast. So it's weird because when you run a YouTube or you run a podcast, you just see these arbitrary numbers. You see these numbers and they exist, but it's kind of hard to realize and connect that there's actual human beings that are connected to those numbers. So you look at the numbers and I'm like, oh, the numbers are down. Oh, the numbers are up. But the thing is like, the fact is that there are numbers and those numbers are connected to people. And therefore, that means that people are actually listening. It might not be a whole fuckload of people, but people are listening. So let's bring Alex in from the waiting room.
16 paranoia-filled days later.
You got a fancy mic.
Yeah.
I got a Bose mic.
Hey, I've been recording a lot of these podcasts and people just do it with their telephone screens. Are you on an actual computer right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're already like 9 steps ahead of most people. Yeah,
Dude, I want to throw my phone in the ocean, man. Like, I don't want that. I just want to always pestering me, like, pay attention, man. I was like, I don't want to pay attention to you.
Yeah,
what's shit to do.
What's weird is people think they're obligated.
Yeah.
That you're obligated to respond just because you're walking around with essentially a tricorder, like a Star Trek tricorder in your pocket. And, and I've been doing this thing where I just ignore people I don't want to talk to.
Good.
Because
your attention belongs to you, not to the sender. Like the person sending the message, your attention does not belong to them. Like, I don't know why that's a norm now, but it seems to be.
Well, and it's weird because people are very demanding of other people's attention, and it's gotten to the point where I feel like I'm more of a hermit these days than in the past, because I do have this device where I'm connected with people at all times, but I'm very choosy about who I even respond to, it makes me feel like, am I being selfish? But also I'm in therapy, and my therapist is like, you need to prioritize you and your mental health. And if there are people that are draining to your mental health, then you need to like create boundaries. And that's stuff I never did because I always was a people pleaser. I always wanted to make everybody happy. I wanted everybody to like me. And now I'm practicing just telling people, no, I can't do that. Sorry. And it's
you should. And don't think about it as being selfish. Think about being self-interested. It's not that you don't like other people or you don't care about other people. You just got to worry about yourself too. So you're self-interested.
This is true.
It doesn't have to be detrimental to your relationships or anything unless they're like so needy that they can't be away from you for 10 seconds. Like, people are crazy.
People are. And that's the other thing too, is I think a lot of people feel that, there's a void inside me and other humans are going to fill that void. And that's one of the main things I learned in therapy as well is like other people aren't going to make me happy. In fact, they can't.
Right.
And so now I'm in the position where it's like, okay, I have to fill these voids myself and not depend. Because for the longest time, I was like codependent on people to, bring to fill that void. And it's like, like I got to fill that shit myself, dog.
Are you recording this? This is great.
Yeah, we're already rolling.
All right, good.
Yeah, I already did like a quick little intro, but here we have Alex from Psychostick.
Hi, everybody.
And right now, I'm doing a live switching thing. So when you talk, it goes to you, and when I talk, and then there's sometimes I just get really crazy with the buttons, and I just hit them a whole bunch of times, so it goes switch. But yeah,
make it as manic as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's me sometimes, and then other times I sleep a lot. So hey, this is Neil, and this is my podcast, SUPcast, and this is episode number 68, I believe, and I'm here with Alex from the band Psychostick. And what is the preferred pronunciation of your last name?
I mean, I had my last name changed in 2010, so I just say Dontre. But if you want to say it a different way, it's just a made-up name. Like, who cares?
Okay.
However you prefer it, that's how it says.
Well, Bobbins adopted the pronunciation Dontre, and then we came up with the Dontre mantra, Dontre. That's my mantra, and then
Which I really enjoy.
and then we went from Dontre to Dontrepreneur, which is entrepreneur with mixed with Dontre. But you say Dontre.
I guess. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's just a made up name, dude.
Okay. And
my value is not dictated by how someone pronounces my name. Like, just get Alex right. That's how I really respond to most people anyway. And it doesn't matter to me, man.
Yeah. What was the motivation for you to change your last name? If you do you feel comfortable talking about that?
Sure. I'll tell you if you want. I mean, shit gets kind of dark sometimes, but I mean, I know you're not one to steer away from dark commentary or anything like that, but I had shitty parents. So my last name used to be Price, Preiss.
Okay.
For whatever, I think it was like a German pronunciation or something.
Oh, German.
And my dad was like super abusive. And so when I was like 19, I was finally accepting that maybe it wasn't me. Maybe everything isn't all my fault. And I started holding people accountable. And basically, let's find some middle ground. But they just straight up refused. Like, you're not a parent. You don't understand this, and just refused to meet me in the middle and just like speak to me like a human being. So if you don't even care about me enough to compromise on something as important as respecting me, fuck off. So 2010 rolled around. I was probably, I don't know, a little bit after 19 anyway, like around that time, that's when I decided it's like, you know what? I need a new identity. My friends are my family now. So I changed my last name. And so it's been over a decade and I feel great.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I have like one half of my family was supportive and good. And it was my mother, and bless her heart. It was weird because the dichotomy was, and I just, a little plug to dichotomies. I just plugged it in the beginning, but it was like I had a super supportive parent and someone that was like ultra loving and ultra supportive, but almost too supportive because they were trying to outweigh the abuse from my father. So it was wild because one could argue that it was just confusing being either my brother or my sister or I growing up, because it was like, here you had this person that nothing was ever good enough for, and this person that just shit on literally everything we did. And then we had this other parent that was like, everything you do is great. You're going to be great. Everything's going to be great. You could do anything you want. And
so two extremes.
Yeah, it was bipolar as fuck. So it was confusing because, am I a piece of shit or am I the most talented genius kid in the world? Like,
right.
And so what ended up happening is I distanced myself from my father as soon as we booted him from the house, which was like when I was still in high school. But then came this whole thing of like having to learn how to discipline myself, because my mom was not a disciplinarian. She was just well, whatever makes you happy, and I love you no matter what. So it almost, I wonder if it hurt me because I was able to just do whatever the fuck I want and pursue whatever I wanted without being super. The discipline came later in my life,
But that's just a growing experience too.
Yeah.
I mean, your brain isn't fully developed until your mid-20s. And that's exactly why you can't rent a car till you're 25 in the US. Is like the insurance companies may not know that explicitly, but that's literally what's happening. Is like your brain is still developing. And the last part to develop is what's called the prefrontal cortex, right in the front of the brain. And that's the decision-making part. So that's why everybody's like, kids make such poor decisions. Why do they do that? It's like, because their brain's not done developing. So just relax, people got to grow and they got to, develop their brains first. Just, you got to be less hard on yourself.
That's interesting. I never knew that. And I have a feeling this podcast is going to be filled with tidbits of knowledge that I do not know. So I want to concentrate on asking you questions and having you talk.
Well, here's the thing. Every single person you ever meet will know something that you don't. That's how I like to view the world. So you learn from anybody, man.
It's true. Even, some, like, let's say a plumber or something. Yeah. I don't know anything about plumbing. I don't know anything about fixing a car. you know? But if you ask me about guitar shit, I know a decent amount about that.
You know a ton more than I do about that.
Yeah. It's got strings and a neck, and it goes wow, 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 wow.
Wow, wow, wow. If you're good, it goes wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, if you're good, it goes, I don't know. Good is subjective. Good is subjective. But, But yeah, so we met in the mid-2000s, and Psychostick was friends with this band, Screaming Mechanical Brain, who at the time was Screaming Monkey Boner, I believe. And
we met them when they were already Screaming Mechanical Brain.
Okay, so
that was prior to even me ever meeting them.
Okay, so that's when, so they had already changed the name, and then we met Psychostick, and I just remember we were at this DIY venue called The Garage, which was and that was in Burnsville, Minnesota. And what's crazy about that is it had like government like funding, like local, the city funded the venue. It was like a teen center for the children of Burnsville, Minnesota, which was a suburb of Minneapolis. Cool. Yeah, very cool. But also because John Wheeler was like on the board there, like Downtown Brown could show up and get blackout drunk and fire hamburgers at kids, and we did that. And that's how we met SMB. But then they're like, I remember I was sitting there and John Wheeler's like, you don't know Psychostick? And I wasn't too hip to like Sirius XM radio, or I wasn't super internet savvy at the time because there was just MySpace. But the beer song had already broke for you guys. And then,
that was around the time it was starting to hit, yeah.
Yeah, and then we ended up going on tour with SMB, like a short little Midwest run with SMB and Psychostick, and we made Downtown Brown made an impression, and we didn't do much after that for a minute.
That's the thing. It was all just a growing experience. You know, perhaps we were all less mature than we are now, and at that point in our careers, we were kind of dissuaded, perhaps a little bit, by antics, like you might put it. But you guys grew up. We grew up. You know, we became really good friends, and now we, as a band, Psychostick has played more shows with Downtown Brown than any other band in our history.
Whoa.
So what does that tell you?
I don't know. I think we're friends.
Yeah, I think so.
I had a dream the other night, and it was a very vivid dream. And somehow I was trying to figure out like why Psychostick hated me. And I remember waking up feeling very sad because it felt that real. It felt like I had these friends in the industry that were like legit friends, because you meet a lot of acquaintances. You meet people that like, you know, they tell you bullshit and they blow smoke up your ass, and it's hard to know who's actually genuine. But I've said it on stage. I feel like we've been touring long enough and we played enough shows to where I consider you guys actually friends. Like when we come to town, you put us up, we get meals together, we bullshit about all types of other shit besides music. It feels like friends, you know. But so that's why when I had this dream, I was just like, no, it felt so real. I'm like, what did I couldn't figure out what I did to make you guys hate me.
It sounds to me like there's some other completely separate, you know, something else you're dealing with, and we just represented it in your brain for some reason. Yeah. Because that's completely not the case. Like, none of us are mad at you.
I know.
I got an insider scoop.
Maddie said, Neil, if you punched me in the face, I would find some way to laugh about it, is what he said. But I'm not
That's a good line. I like that.
I'm not going to do that anytime soon. I haven't punched a human being since 1999. And it was my brother. And we punched each other. And that's the last time I got in a fist fight. It's something I don't plan on doing anytime soon.
I don't think I've punched anybody since I was in martial arts, because I was working on that. I was in Kuk Sul for like 10 years, and I got my black belt when I was 16. But, you know, after that, I mean, yeah, I haven't kept up on it at all. Like, my interest kind of shifted, and I went into music, and, you know, here I am now. So, yeah, I'm not really a martial artist, but when I was a kid, I definitely was.
Wow, that's cool. So you got a black belt. That means you like sparred and competed and all that.
Oh, yeah, I've been to tournaments. You know, I didn't win everything all the time or anything, but I participated in quite a few tournaments with people in Taekwondo and karate and a bunch of others. But I was in Korean martial arts called Kuk Sul Won.
Wow. Did you ever knock anybody out? Did you ever hit anyone really hard?
No, there wasn't like that. Like whenever we had, whenever we were in tournaments, we were sparring. We all had the full, the protective gear on our heads. Actually, we weren't even allowed to do headshots.
Oh wow, okay.
Like you couldn't hit to the face or anything. It was all like you get points by hitting to the chest, like punching or kicking or whatever it was. So no one was getting, for the most part, no one was getting hurt. And if they were, they took steps to make sure, like, all right, are you okay? Let's step away, like break this up, whatever it might be. So it was a lot. It's not like the movies at all, man.
Yeah. So it's more like a point system kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And
like you learn how to actually fight, but in the tournament, it's not, the objective is not to hurt each other. It's to earn points for the purpose of the demonstration or the tournament.
Okay. Whereas in MMA, it's about knocking the other guy out.
Yeah, this is a very, very different thing from MMA. That's a lot more, I actually want to hurt this person. I want to knock them out. I want to cause brain damage. We did none of that. For us, martial arts was about protecting yourself. It was, it was not about going out and starting fights and talking shit and being a lunatic. It was a lot more about how can you keep yourself safe in real situations, like a street situation. So, give or take, it depends on your perspective which one you might prefer, but I preferred that one.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah, I guess I would prefer to some sort of a point system where my head is protected as opposed to having someone trying to take my head off, Right.
And then getting brain damage and you get dementia later in life. It's like, I have zero interest in any of that. Get kicked in the face.
Yeah, it's wild. When I was a teenager, I played on the football team, and this was before any of the research on concussions and whatnot, and any of the rules were implemented in professional sports about concussions. And I remember I was on the offensive line, and I used to lead with my head, and I would essentially come off the line and smash dudes with my head. And I was just young, and I was I felt invincible at the time, and I had a lot of anger and resentment built up inside of me, and so it was very cathartic to smash people with my face. But what the weird part about it is, looking back in hindsight, is I actually just got back from physical therapy, and my neck is all messed up, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so in high school I was smashing people with my face, and then after high school I headbanged for 20 years, and
right,
and now look at me.
Body's just trying to recover, just give us a minute.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I was watching an interview with the dude from Slayer, Tom Araya, and he was saying that he and two other people in his band, and then a bunch of other people in the Big Four, which is Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, and Slayer, I believe. He said they all had the same neck surgery. I don't know specifically.
Surgery?
Yeah, surgery. I don't know specifically what surgery that is, but he said they all had the same neck surgery because of headbanging.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I'm 40, going to be 41 in February. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm slowly approaching 50. And I'm just thinking to myself, how long is my body going to last?
Right.
Before.
But you eat really well nowadays. I mean, last time we were hanging out, just the nutrients you're putting in your body is a lot better than most people I know, which is super important, because if you're not giving yourself the nutrients that you need, your health is going to be deteriorated dramatically. So, I mean, you got that for you going for you.
I got nutrients. I feel like nutrients. I feel like I'm playing catch up though, because there were so many years where I was just kicking the shit out of myself and and then abusing myself. It was weird because I had 13 years of no alcohol, and I just passed that milestone, and it's really wild because if I do the math now, I've been sober in my band longer than I was a drunk guy in my band.
That's awesome, man.
It's insane.
That's a cool way to look at it.
Yeah, but
it's a really cool way to look at it.
I remember when I started my band, I'm just this is a vehicle for me to be an alcoholic. This is that's like a perk, is that I get free booze because I'm the loud guy with the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that is my band has that song Beer, and that's the one that kind of gave us a little bit of a name in the industry and all that. When I recorded that, I was 17 and I'd never had a beer in my life.
Oh, wow.
So people are like, what? It just blows their minds. Like, you're in the beer band. You never had a beer? I'm like, I'm 17, dude.
Well, I feel like that song's really tongue in cheek, and when
for sure.
If you listen to it with the right mindset, you're just like, oh, okay, this song is making fun of people who get all drunk and act stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why the one line that I contributed to that song, what happened was Rob and Josh were working at the same bank, which got bought out by Chase and all this stuff later on. But they were working at a bank and I was still in high school. So I got home from high school and they called me, supposed to be working, but they called me from work and said, we got this idea for a song. They played it for me over the phone. And I thought it was so funny. And then they're like, we just don't know what to say for the last line of the song. And I'm like, how about let's go drive a car? And they lost it. They thought it was so funny because it's obviously a joke. You know, this is clearly a joke, but it's like so, ooh, that's a little bit tough. You know, like I thought it was really funny and they loved it. So that's how that line got into the song. That's my one contribution aside from the drums for that song.
Wow, little tidbit I did not know. Yeah, because I mean, it's lines like that that really drive it home that this is behavior the band is not necessarily condoning, and
exactly.
And if you have a brain, you can tell that this is tongue in cheek. That we're not telling you to drive a car. Yeah, we like my band has a drinking song as well, where we take it almost a step further, and we say, I need to get a chick drunk so I can get some ass. And then I actually, in the recorded version of the song, I say, I'm not really serious about that. Like, I actually break the fourth wall, and I'm like, I'm not really serious about that because I know
you've done that a couple times in your records where you break that wall.
Yeah.
You just explain things in your real life, like, this is what this is about, or don't listen to me, I'm not being truthful here.
Like the last record, I have a song about, I was in a polyamorous relationship for about like 8 or 9 months, and I break the fourth wall. Is it the third wall or the fourth wall? Which wall is it?
I guess the fourth. I don't know the terminology all that well, but I remember that's the song I was actually thinking about just now was that one with the relationship stuff.
Yeah, I break out a character, and I'm just like, listen, like you can do whatever the fuck you want to do, you know, yada yada. Like if you don't want to practice monogamy, that's completely up to you, and yada yada. And what else did I say? I said it wasn't this person's problem, it was the problem of the people involved, which was like me and this other guy got involved with this girl, and we weren't like really into the polyamory thing, but we both were like had a big thing for her, and she just kind of, it was a terrible mess. But yeah, I broke the wall, and I came out and I said, I just like laid it all out. And what's funny is like I got a YouTube comment from a fan of my band, and he's just like talking about how I'm trying to be all woke and all PC, and explain it. He said, why can't you just play the fucking song and not have to explain it? And there was a part of me that I just felt really strongly that it needed to be explained. So
here's the thing: it's your art. It's not the commenter's art.
This
like
is true.
Everybody's got to have an opinion, but guess what? It's your song, man.
Yeah. And I just responded, LOL, and that's all I said.
LOL.
Yeah, I just said LOL because, yeah, ultimately...
That's for lots of love, right?
Yeah, lots of love. Well, ultimately, it's like, yeah, this is my shit, and if I want to break the fourth wall, and if I want to explain point for point exactly what this song is about, I have every right to do so. And even if it's in the middle of a musical composition, in fact, sometimes I feel like, you know, if you, like, do a tempo shift, or if you like, or if one portion of the song completely drops tempo, or you know, in comes this other part that is completely out of left field, sometimes that makes it more exciting. And to me, the song stopping and then me going on this like really ranty diatribe, to me it kind of made the song unique. But I'm just a guy.
Yeah, it's unique. It's interesting. It's, you know, something I don't hear very often at all. And actually, it made me think of, have you ever seen the show Mr. Robot?
No.
It's an excellent show. On the surface, it's all about like hackers and things like that. But really what the show fundamentally is about is mental health. And that's something that they do throughout the entire series is they address the viewer. They're talking directly to you, you know, generally not speaking, but you hear like their thoughts, and they're like addressing the viewer as you're watching it. So it's a really creative, interesting way to approach storytelling in the TV show kind of format.
That's interesting. Yeah, because a lot of shows, actually, I wish they would do that, you know, to kind of explain it a little bit more and not have us guessing so much.
Yeah, they do in that one, man. It's really good. It's tough. It'll fuck with your head a little bit, but it's really, really good.
What's it called?
Mr. Robot?
Mr. Robot. And what is it? What platform is it streaming on?
I bought the DVDs, man. Like, if the internet's out, you can't watch it anymore. So I liked it enough to where I just bought the discs. I'm not sure what platform it's on, but I want to say Showtime, maybe. I don't really know.
I could look it up, but we're talking right now, so let's.
But Rami Malek is the main guy in the show. He plays the main character.
Okay,
and he was the one who played
Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury, exactly. He got an award for that, like
he won an Oscar
or something, I believe. Yeah, same dude.
And he wore some sort of teeth implants where he replicated Freddie Mercury's overbite by wearing some sort of an implant. So like while he was acting in that, and I never saw that movie. All I know was about his fake teeth that he wore over his teeth.
Wow.
Did you see that movie?
The thing that blew me away about that movie, because I did see it, I liked the whole thing. The movie was really good. The acting was great. But the thing that impressed me the most was at the very end, they were performing at this massive concert. And the sound of the music when they were on stage sounds like the music when you're actually on stage, because it's fundamentally different from when you're listening out in the audience.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that because they haven't performed on stage.
Yeah.
But they did it correctly because the guys from Queen, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure they were there as producers for the movie.
Okay.
So they made sure that the sound on stage sounded like what it sounds like actually on a stage.
Wow.
So they really put some thought into it. Like the detail behind that movie was astonishing.
So the drummer definitely needed more bass and guitar and vocals in their wedge.
No, they're Queen. They got what they want. They got some sound check.
Well, what's crazy about that show is that's a 30-minute performance at Live Aid, and that was was considered to be one of like the greatest live performances in the history of music. And all it was Queen's 30-minute set, which essentially, if you break it down, was a medley, because it seemed like during that performance they didn't really stop and address the audience that much, except when he was doing the yada da da yada da da da.
Oh yeah.
You know when they do the call and answer thing. Did you see? Did they do that part in the movie?
Yeah, that was like a big, exciting part of. It was like kind of the finale of the movie in a sense. Like it was a really cool way to not only approach how they performed on that stage, but it got you into the mood of it. It like got everybody excited as viewers, like you're at the concert or something. It was crazy.
Well, I am inclined to see this movie now.
Cool. I think I like it.
So, okay, so you were 17 years old and you were starting this. Had the band already started, or were you starting this band with Josh and Rob?
So in 1999, Josh had started the band under a different name called Asinine in Texas. So he was like bouncing around playing different instruments, but he's the core original member for that. And then 2000, they moved to Arizona, Rob and Josh, specifically to rebrand essentially and create what was known as Psychostick. So Psychostick was created in 2000 when I was 15. I joined the band. We got another guy named Hunter, and then we started actual Psychostick as we know it now when I was 15. So fast forward 2 years after that, that's when we recorded the drums for the first album.
So what would the actual established in year be? 2000? Okay.
Yeah.
Did y'all ever do like a 20th anniversary thing?
No, because it was 2020. So yeah, there wasn't a lot. It's not that there wasn't anything to celebrate. It's just we were more interested in celebrating the 15-year anniversary for We Couldn't Think of a Title. So we did that in 2018 because that was 2003 to 2018.
Okay.
15. We did a tour. I could look on I have all my laminates hanging up back here, but
yes.
We did a tour with, I don't remember who now, but we were celebrating the 15-year anniversary for that at least. But we'll do another one in a couple of years and get the 20-year in there.
Yeah. Where are you right now?
I am at the studio. I have a little office. I call it my study. I'm at our studio.
Oh, excellent. The new studio.
Mm-hmm. New studio. We got
city?
the streaming set up, the whole thing. It's really cool.
How close is it to the last one?
Very close.
Okay, so what city?
I'm not going to tell you. I'll tell you on a text later.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So I probably shouldn't go into it too much, but a guy ended up showing up at our studio and asked if he could watch us stream. We're like, it's 2020. We're in the middle of a pandemic. No, you may not come in. Sorry, dude. Then when we played with you guys in Dearborn just a couple months ago, that guy showed up to the concert. He's like, hey, I was the one who came to your studio. And I'm like, yep, can't do that. That's our home, man. Like that was pretty inappropriate, but we like the guy as an individual. Like, I'm glad he came to the show, and I'm glad he did it the right way. Like, we come to you, you don't come to us.
Yeah. You know? Well, I think a lot of people don't really understand that there's reasons for separation. Yeah. If you're like an artist or any sort of entity that exists, whether it's on the internet or in real life. And that's the crazy thing, because my girlfriend has this candle company, right? And when she's starting to get all these emails, because she's doing a lot of business through Etsy, and she's doing really well with it. But it's crazy. She sent out this email blast, and I got the first email blast, and it had her home address on it, and I was like, Allie, no, like, you gotta change that. And she's like, well, I have to put an actual address. I can't put a PO box, because she has a PO box. Yeah. And I told her, put any other address on there. Put an address we used to live at like 3 years ago on it, and not our actual address. She fixed it very quickly. That's good. But it's just one of those things where it's like, when I send out my email blast, the address I put on there is the place I lived in like 2019. And there's like different people living there right now, because for some reason these email companies, they require an actual like mailing address, and it's wild. I'm just like, I'm gonna put any, like, because people are fucking weird. And what I notice about like Insane Clown Posse, they do a lot of stuff where they actually bring their fans into Violent J's house, and
that's nuts, man.
Yeah, and he's like pretty, what's the word where you're like, don't really care if people know where you live, like, but he's
apathetic?
No, he's not. Is he liberal about? It's weird. It's weird because I got an email blast from ICP, and I'm pretty sure it had his actual fucking, because their studio's at his house now, and I'm like, bro, am I looking at this right? Am I looking at this email with his actual home address on it? And that shit just gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I'm not even like, in comparison to ICP, I mean, we're like minutely successful or whatever.
To be fair, on our very first album that we put out independently, the first 1,000 copies, Rob put his cell phone number on it, because he's like, well, if somebody important listens to the album, they like it, then they're going to want to call us so they can book us and we can be on tour with Slayer next month. That was our thinking, back when I was 17, 18 years old. We're like, yeah. And then after the first 1,000 copies, like, no, that's a terrible idea. So none of the ones after that had his number on there.
Smart. Yeah, and I know for a fact that Rob wouldn't do anything remotely even close to that these days.
We just didn't know, man. Like,
right. Yeah.
We had no idea.
And when someone finds out where you rehearse and where you stream, it's just like, how do you nicely tell them that this is wrong?
Well, what we actually did, we're just like, thank you for caring, but this is not an appropriate way to show that you care. And we asked, like, why didn't you just reach out beforehand? And his response was, because you would have told me no. Like, well, what does that tell you? Like, we weren't trying to shame him. We weren't trying to make him feel bad, but we had to get our point across and be a little bit stern about it. Not mean, but stern.
Right.
It's like, can't do that, guys.
That means that they knew. They knew.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. It's like, because you would tell me no, then why did you do it anyway? Like, human beings are strange.
Yeah.
So 2000 happens, and then the record comes out. How many years after the band actually starts?
2003 was when the record first came out.
Okay, cool. So similarly, like our first record came out, we started in 01. First record came out in 02. So we're like, Downtown Brown and Psychostick are similar in age.
Yeah, very similar. You guys were quicker to get your first one out, though, it sounds like.
Yeah, I remember we signed to this small Detroit label, and like, the thought process in my mind is like, we're gonna be a big band in a couple years. Like that.
Yeah.
I was like legitimately convinced that like this shit's gonna blow up, bro. I remember playing it for my brother, playing the first record, and he looks at me, he's like, "You're gonna fucking blow up, dude." And I'm like, "I know."
He's like, hell yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And then us, we're just like, no one's gonna listen to this. Just put your phone number on it, just in case, you know.
I mean, looking back, it's insanity. Like both of those mindsets, you know.
Yes, it's all completely bonkers.
Yeah, and okay, and so We Couldn't Think of a Title comes out in 2003, and like, what was the time period like between that album actually coming out and it gaining some steam? It was like probably a couple year period of you guys playing some like local shows and whatnot, right?
Yeah, right after the album came out, our bass player, Mike, at the time, he moved to Texas. Like almost immediately after the album came out, we're like, shit, what are you doing? And basically his dad wanted him to go to college. So he's like, okay, Dad. So he moves to Texas and starts going to college. And we do almost nothing in 2004. So that's when we all kind of went off and did this other thing, which became Evacuate Chicago, our just complete side project. So we put out the first Psychostick record and then did nothing to promote it, went off and did another record. And then in 2005, we came back and started doing Psychostick again, because that's when we started getting a little bit of radio play, because radio stations somehow got a hold of Beer, the song, and E-Bomb's World, if you remember that. Like they found a video at some point and they started playing the video. And so it started accelerating around 2005. And then by 2006, that's when we talked to a couple labels, and I can tell you some shit about some other labels we did not sign with, but the label we actually liked and respected us and gave us a fair deal was Rock Ridge Music in 2006.
Yeah. And you were with them for like a bunch of albums, like 4 albums or something, right?
1, 2, 5.
Oh, wow.
No, 6.
Holy shit.
The Evacuate Chicago one too. Yeah, 6 records.
Well, so then it must have been a good working relationship for that time.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It was a 50-50 split for the money, and that's how people think it probably always is, but that's not the case, generally speaking, in the music industry.
No.
So we had 50 points, they call it. So that's very rare. And we never relinquished ownership of any of our songs, not a single one. Like in the contract, it was a 7-page contract, the first one we ever signed. And we did not give over ownership. It was just basically licensing them to print the music and represent us, basically. So it was a fair deal. And each album contract's for one album, how it should be. It was very reasonable. It was respectful. You know, that's how the music industry should be. And I love those guys. They were great for us. Obviously, we are doing something else now. We've kind of, we stepped away from them. We're not with them anymore, but I have zero bad things to say about Rock Ridge. They were great to us the whole time we were there.
That's good. You don't hear many stories like that.
Yeah. Well, here's the reason. It's because the other label, and I'll tell you who if you want, because I don't give a shit.
Dish the dirt.
Virgin Records. So they wanted to sign us. And we had a guy representing us, just very briefly, trying to get us in touch with some labels. And he got us in touch with Virgin Records. And they offered us this deal. And I'm looking through it. And I'm like, well, the first thing I asked on the phone call, like the initial conversation with these guys, well, will we get to keep the rights to our own music? Because I'd been reading books on the industry and like, watch out for all this shit. And so I was very, apprehensive to sign anything because I knew that they could very easily own us. And so that's the first thing I asked, and they never called back. That was the end of the conversation, because I asked if we would be able to retain the rights to our own music. And they disliked that so severely, they wouldn't even talk to us after that. So I was like, fuck the industry. Yeah. But that's when the guy who was helping us out, that's when he reached out to Rock Ridge, and they're actually in it for the right reasons and not just to like rape the artists and take all their money and all this stuff and just ruin them. So we ended up in the right place.
That's funny. Virgin, through one question, like smelled that you weren't stupid.
One question. That's the only thing I asked those people.
That's hilarious.
Well, yeah. So that was pretty pathetic, I think.
So when
I hear about like these 55-page deals with Sony and shit like that, I'm like, we had a solid deal with 7 pages. Why do you need a 55-page contract? And that's really just so they can own everything about you forever throughout the known universe. Yeah, and that's just not how we do business. So.
Yeah, I feel like all those pages are a bunch of clauses that like redirect to other clauses that just make it so it's just a bunch of gobbledygook.
That's exactly right. Do you want to know the secret?
Yes.
How to read a contract and how to see through the bullshit? Go to the very last page and read all the footnotes. All the end notes and footnotes. That's what you do. Start on the last page. And if those are bullshit, then the rest of it's bullshit too. If it doesn't have any footnotes and end notes, that means the information is already in the contract. But if they say a bunch of crap and then is completely refuted at the very end of the contract, then it's all bullshit. So don't sign it in the first place.
Yeah, because it's like it gives you all these terms. And because I've signed a few contracts in my time, but they definitely were short contracts, and at the end they didn't contradict themselves a bunch.
Exactly. And that's a genuine contract. I'm not just trying to mislead you and own you forever and then ruin your entire career.
Imagine your job is writing legal documents that like you write them in a way that they just negate all of the information in the first however many pages. Like that's your job.
It's brutal.
Did
you know, I recently heard about the guys from Chevelle. They were in, I don't know, like a 10 album contract or maybe 7. I don't know the exact numbers, but I read a brief little interview by, I think it was the singer, and he was talking about how they finally completed their contract after working with this company. I think it was Sony even, for over a decade. And they said they had never been paid. The band Chevelle has never been paid by their label.
That's insane.
And they've sold millions of copies.
Yeah, I forget what their big single was, but like I know the name for sure.
Yeah, they're getting radio play. They're getting all kinds of like big festival shows. I mean, if they have never been paid, what are your chances as an upcoming artist to be paid if you sign with a label like that? Like it's slim to none, man. You got to go indie. Like that's, in my opinion, at least. Well, yeah, if you want control over your life, you got to be indie.
Yeah, and especially nowadays when like physical media isn't as much of a thing as it was.
Not as much. You're right. But still about a quarter of all revenue, like not just income, but like all revenue, a quarter of it is still physical media. So if bands aren't printing anything physical, they're missing out on a quarter of the potential revenue for what they could be making.
I did not know that. Mm-hmm. That is interesting.
So having both available, if people prefer physical, great. If they prefer streaming, great. Whatever.
Yes, you must provide them with an option.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're selling yourself short if you only have the one thing. So
I agree.
Get physical, baby. So 06, the beer song is starting to get some traction, and then what was the meeting? Was there a meeting? What was the decision to like start? Let's take this to the road. Let's start traveling, because I feel like 06 is when you and I met, and that was in the baby stages of you guys being a touring entity.
So in the summer of 2006, I was working a job at American Music, but they were bought out and turned into Music and Arts. So it was basically a mini Guitar Center. I was working there in Mesa, Arizona, and I got a call from either Josh or Rob, I don't remember who, one of the guys, and said, "Oh, dude, we got a tour offer. It starts in like a month." Or I forget the exact numbers, but it starts very soon. I'm like, "What is it?" And they said, "It's a band called Bobaflex." And I had never heard of Bobaflex, but apparently they were big in Ohio. It's like, okay, sure, let's do a 3-month tour. And it's only half booked. But yeah, our very first tour was 3 months long. I think it started in July. I think it started in July of 06 and went on for 3 months. And there were so many gaps in the schedule that there would be like a week off here and a week off here.
No way.
Coast to coast. We came back $10,000 in debt.
Oh, dude.
For one tour. And then we couldn't stop because it's either continue touring and and actually push through and make it work, or give up on music. So then we continued to stay on the road because we got a booking agent, not a good one, but a booking agent, and stayed on the road for the next year. So it took us a year, and then we were back to zero. We'd finally made enough to where we were back to zero. And then so by 07 at some point, we're like, all right, we're finally in the black again.
Oh my geez. That's a nightmare scenario just from the jump. And so this is after you signed with Rockridge and you're getting some radio play, and then you're like, let's hit the road with this band, and then all of a sudden you go on a 3-month fucking tour. That's crazy.
3 months, and there were so many gaps. Like, we were outdrawing Bobaflex in a lot of the markets.
Oh wow.
Like, not in Ohio. Like, they had a lot of people in Ohio and Michigan and places like that. So in the Midwest, they did well, but we were outdrawing them in a lot of places, and we made $100 a night, and that was our flat guarantee.
Gross.
And we even came up to the promoter, or I'm sorry, the TM, the tour manager for Bobaflex, and he was a grumpy man. And we approached him one point. We're like, dude, we're outdrawing your guys by a lot. Can we like bump it up to 150? Like, we're really struggling. He's like, nope. And we're just looking at him like, is that the end of the conversation? And we're like, what about? And he's like, just no, we're not doing that. So it was just a hard no.
Yeah.
Like, okay, but we didn't drop off the tour. We stuck it through to the end despite struggling massively. But whatever, we didn't realize that there was an option to drop off. That just wasn't in the cards. Like, we didn't know that was a thing. We thought if you commit to a tour, you got to do the whole tour. And so because of that, that's largely why we're here today, is because if we had dropped off, we probably would have stopped playing music, because we would have said, oh, that's too hard. We don't know how to do that. We can't tour now. And that would have probably been the end of the band. So because we didn't know that quitting was an option, we didn't quit. Therefore, here we are.
We just didn't know we could quit, so we kept going.
We didn't know if that was a thing or not. Like, we'd never been on the road before. Like, we just kept going.
That's fucking funny, man. So what happened after? So you get out of the initial $10,000 debt, and what happens after that? Is it just like, okay, we need to record more, we need to tour more? Like, what happened next?
In 2007, that's when we recorded the Flesh Eating Roller Skate album. It was the holiday album that we did. Yeah. This is the EP, really. So we put that one out, and then we did the Holiday Hate tours. I think you guys were on one of them, if not both of them.
SMB was.
SMB was. I thought you were on the second one. Is that not right? Too many tours.
We weren't on an actual tour with y'all, because we only did the few shows in 06, and I was really drunk and ridiculous. And we might have done a couple shows in 07. And then you like Psychostick would come to town every once in a while, and we would do like a one-off with you guys all the way up until 2011. We didn't do our first tour with you guys until 2012, because I don't even know how it actually happened. I think we just would like kind of pop in when y'all were in Michigan or Ohio, and just be like, hey, it's us, those guys. And I think 2011 we played the Machine Shop with you guys, and I don't know what happened, if it was that show you guys decided to offer us a tour in 2012, and then we did a tour in 2012, which was the Punch Your Cock In tour.
Oh, was that the one with Ventana? Like, you guys, us and Ventana?
It was SMB did a portion with it. We never played with Ventana.
Oh, okay.
It was in 2012. There was 2 Punch Your Cock-Ins, and one had SMB on it and us, and the other had us and someone else. I don't know. I have the poster.
Tell you what, let me get a reference real quick. Hold on one second.
Yeah, do it. Spreadsheets. Yeah, he's got all the laminates, dude.
So,
oh my god, that's a lot.
He's back in my ears.
I love the ones with the Jägermeister lanyard. I have so many Jägermeister lanyards from you guys.
These are our laminates. Each one of these is a year. So let me find 2012. We'll get the bottom of this. That's 2013.
There was 2 Punch Your Cock In tours, and we were on. I think we were on 2 of them, or one of them.
Here it is.
I don't fucking know.
I think I found it.
I can't believe how long ago it was. 2012 is almost 10 years ago, pretty soon, which is insane.
Here it is. I mean, it's real fucking blurry. Like, even that laminate is cheap and blurry, but Punch Your Cock In tour Psychostick, Ventana. I can't even read some of the names on here. Who made these? We must have made these.
Whichever tour we were on, we didn't do any shows with Ventana. I know the.
Okay.
I know the.
Maybe it was 2015. Who knows?
That was 2012. But at whatever happened in 2012, we just kept doing tours, and we just kept doing tours, and we kept doing tours. But
we just never stopped.
Yeah. And now here we are, and it's 2021, almost 2022. That's crazy.
Yeah, happy December.
Yes, December 1st.
We made it.
We're here. But yeah, so that shit was wild. Yeah, because I remember like we knew Corrado, and we would pop in and do shows, and then we did in 2010 we did that crazy show at Skatopia. And
oh my God, that was so crazy.
So we would always just see you guys, and I don't think we were like outwardly like bugging you about doing more. I think I already kind of knew the ship had sailed. Like when we got booted from Warped Tour and whatnot, I'm like, okay, Psychostick, like we'll play with them when we can, but they think I'm a fucking maniac, which I kind of was, and like I wasn't like hyper offended. I was just like, okay, well that's a band that's not going to take us out. In fact, we didn't get taken out on the road until 2011 with Polka Dot Cadaver. And that was the first.
No kidding.
That was the first bigger band that ever, after the whole Warped Tour shenanigans, took a liking to Downtown Brown enough for us to take us out on the road. And I remember arguing with Bobbins because we were touring too much when he first joined the band. He's like, I don't know if I want to do that tour. And I remember just giving him crap, and I remember being like, this is a big opportunity, but for all intents and purposes, like Polka Dot Cadaver, it wasn't like the Rolling Stones asked us to come out. It was like a band that was definitely a bigger band than Downtown Brown asked us to come out. But I remember thinking, like where my head was at back then in 2011, I'm like, this is a big fucking deal. Like we got to say yes to this. And we went to Montreal with them, and we went to Toronto. We went all over Canada, and we went to Maine. That's where we met. We played the Cave, and we met Nick Alley for the first time. It was all in 2011.
Yeah.
And that was right before, like, we started touring a whole fuckload with you guys. Yeah, seems like yesterday.
It's wild, man, like how much stuff happens. 2012 was also the year for us where we first played an international show. We were flown out to Calgary, Canada, and we were asked to play Noctis. It was the Noctis Metal Fest. Probably the most metal show. Where's the laminate? You'll love it. Probably the most metal show we've ever done in our lives, just because where the fuck is it?
There's a lot of black metal bands, like crazy metal bands.
Yeah.
Like was Immortal on the bill?
It wasn't Immortal, but Venom was headlining.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So legit black metal.
So Venom was headlining. They had Nunslaughter.
Nice.
And we had found a used copy of one of their albums from Nunslaughter years ago, and they had a song called I Am Death. And he's like, I am death. Death is me. Killing people, setting them free. Like, we thought it was amazing. So finally, we're going to play with Nunslaughter. Are you kidding me? So that was huge. Pig Destroyer was on the show. Like, it was just complete insanity. So that was our first international show, playing in Canada, and also like the most metal show ever.
So where was the band at in 2012 in comparison to 2006 when you first started hitting the road?
Oh, we were, let's see, we couldn't think of a title out. We had Flesh Eating out. Sandwich came out in 2009, and Space Vampires, our 2011 album, that was out. So we had multiple albums under our belt versus just like one.
And I feel like between 06 and 2012, like the band had established itself way more as like kind of a viral video, not dare I say machine, but it seemed like the video for Sandwich did really well, and it seemed like the beer song was still doing very well on YouTube, and like YouTube had risen to prominence since then, because I remember when YouTube first started in like 05, but since then it became like a really viable commodity as far as music is concerned, and I feel like the stature of the band Psychostick was like way heightened by 2012 because there was just all this content floating around. Is that accurate?
I think that's accurate. Yeah, because for the album Sandwich, Murph, who became, now he's like a member of the band, essentially. Like he's one of our songwriters now. Even he doesn't play an instrument, but he's like definitely one of the creators of the art now. He came out to Kansas City to meet up with us for a weekend, and our goal was to record, like film 3 videos to support Sandwich. So 3 videos in one weekend. So we did the video for Girl Directions, the one for Do You Want a Taco? And we did another one for a song called Caffeine, but we never released it until years later because it was only half finished.
Right.
But yeah, we filmed 3 entire videos in the course of a weekend. And that's how our, working relationship with Murph, like we were friends long, long before that, but that's how our working relationship with Murph really started. And then it just has accelerated ever since then. And videos are now like a big part of what we do. It's like another form of art, essentially.
Yeah, because now he's like the 5th band member, essentially.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah, he's great, man.
Yeah, he's really good at what he does as far as video editing and the animation and the After Effects, and like his knowledge of all that is crazy. It helps him.
It's astonishing.
It helps him when you do that stuff for a living, but also like you can tell that he just really has a passion for it.
Yeah, he cares. Like he wants to get better every time. Like in my opinion, he's a little bit hard on himself sometimes. Like, dude, you're awesome at this, but he never expects something to be all that good, and then when it turns out really good, he's proud of himself, of course, as he should be. But I think he doesn't expect it to be as good as it turns out to be. And I don't know if that motivates him. Like he doesn't want it to be bad. I'm not really sure how his brain works exactly, but he's awesome at it. So it's really cool to get something that looks so good when he's like really excited about it.
I think creative people are inherently just hard on themselves in general. Like I haven't met too many people that are like, they always are striving to be better or they just beat themselves up. I don't know. Like most creative people I know are just like, I'm shit. I don't know. At least in my circles, like most people I know that are, I know a lot of really amazing artists that are terribly fucking hard on themselves.
Right.
And a lot of them will internalize perceived success and numbers and just all this arbitrary shit and use that, and I've been mega guilty of this over the years, and just use that as like a baseball bat to pummel ourselves because which is just ridiculous, because I was just talking in the beginning of this podcast. I look at the numbers, and sometimes, people actually listen to this podcast, and I'm just like, I get down about it. But then I'll meet someone in real life that is like, hey, that podcast you did about that thing, when you were talking about this thing, it really affected me in a positive way. And I watch every single one of them now, type of thing. So even if the numbers are small, there are human beings connected to those numbers,
Yeah. And I have a whole lot to say about that, because there's a distinct negativity bias where we are more sensitive to the negativity than we are to the equal but opposite positive inputs. And that's why the news shovels negativity at us all the time, because they know if they showed a more realistic account of the world that's not all bullshit and terrible and depressing, people aren't going to watch it as much because they're not just horrified and like they can't take their eyes off the screen. That's why the news is a conveyor belt of negativity. It's not because the world is actually like that. Is because that's what they know we can't look away from. Like the classic, can't look away from the car crash or the train wreck or whatever it might be. So with that negativity bias, it's the same exact thing with critics. And so, that's evolved a lot into the comment section in more modern day parlance. But the reason why I don't give a fuck about critics is because it's not genuine. Because if they actually wrote a review of an album, let's say, and they said nothing but good things because it's a fantastic album, no one's going to read it. It doesn't tap into that negativity bias. So they feel like they have to put something negative and snarky at the end of it just so that they have credit for it, just so that they can, be more popular in their world or whatever it might be. So it's not even genuine. So critics are inherently false. Therefore, their value is nothing to me. Like, I do not care what critics think. I don't even read what they say because it's not even genuine, man. I care what real people have to say. So like you're saying, somebody might watch your podcast and be benefited by it, by whatever you're talking about or something that reaches them emotionally. Those are the people that matter. not the bullshit critics who are paid to be, professional complainers.
Right. And it's not just like that anyone's critical about it. It's that I'm critical of myself. And I think that if I'm spending time doing something, I need to be rewarded with these like, it's just like ones and zeros on a computer screen, just numbers,
right.
So how do you get beyond giving a fuck about how something performs numerically and just like make stuff because that's just what you do? Like, you know what I mean?
That depends on the person, I think. I mean, personally, I just ignore that entire side of it as best I can. I'm susceptible to it sometimes where it might eke its way into my brain a little bit, but I try my best to just keep it at arm's length and just, if people like it, awesome. If they don't like it, oh, well, we're going to try again. Just keep throwing those darts, Not every one of them is going to be a smash hit, but you just got to keep throwing those darts.
Would you say there's a freedom involved in what the crew, the 5 creative entities in Psychostick do these days where you just do whatever the fuck you want and you're not necessarily concerned with, are people going to like this as much as Beer or the Beard song, yada, yada?
Absolutely. It doesn't go like that for every single song, but I think the overarching philosophy of our group is we do what we do because we choose to do what we do. When we started out as a band, we have a real good friend, and I don't want to say his name on the podcast or anything like that, but great dude, great guitar player. But he told us many years ago, like, you got to stop doing the funny thing. And it's like, it's not going to work. You're never going to get anywhere. And we're like, we love you, dude, but no, like, we're not doing it because other people say we can't do it. Just because no one has done exactly what we've been doing before doesn't mean it can't be done. And so his perspective was one thing, and he was in a popular band in Phoenix at the time, and his band broke up and they never really did anything else in the music world, at least. Like, he's successful in other ways, but in music, we have gone way farther than he ever did. And I think
it's because you didn't drop off the Boba Flex tour.
Yeah,
it's because you stuck with that one tour. That's
right.
Go ahead,
but
though.
He was following trends while we were trying to make new things that were interesting to us, and that's why we find it compelling. If we were just trying to copy what other bands have already done, then it wouldn't be compelling to us, for one, and also you're already 2 years behind, because if you're copying something that's already out, that song was probably recorded and written a long time before that even. So you're already behind. Like, that's kind of just how I see it.
It's hard to chase trends for sure.
Yeah. And it's not that we don't pay attention to it at all, but I think the overarching philosophy is that we try to keep that kind of stuff at arm's length, because we know that if we were doing everything according to the rules, what you're supposed to do, it's not going to be fun anymore. It's just going to be work. And so we really try to just embrace that kind of punk rock philosophy. Let's fuck everybody else. We're going to do this. We're going to do our thing. That's what makes us unique. That's what makes it compelling for us. And I hope that shows. That's
absolutely. Yeah, because you would have changed somewhere along the ways if you weren't committed to being yourselves. At some point you would have been like, oh well, this, we should try doing something else. You know what I'm saying? Like, and especially knowing you guys personally, like there's a really personal element to you guys' sense of humor and sensibilities and what you guys do that it comes across in the music. It's like only you guys could be this band, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I never thought about that before, but thank you. Like, I feel like that's a funny way to put it. I wonder if I don't know. Like, I wonder if a different group of people, if they were to do something very similar, if it would come out kind of the same way. But there's different types of comedy too. So we have comedic bands that just do it differently. Yeah. We just think that, for us at least, like, we just think when something is comedic and like overly aggressive for no reason, we just find that really funny. So
it's a great combination. And Murph's like narrator voice, I don't know if you noticed, but it's so distinctly Murph's sense of humor. So when he makes his little video commercials and plugs, and he's like, "All right, guys, it's just," I can't like really do his voice.
Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's so distinctly Patrick Murphy's sensibilities and sense of humor when he's doing the voiceovers, and even that little bump when we did our stream together. And he made that little dance song where he's like, "Hey guys, we're gonna do a live stream," and then it goes into the Downtown Brown and Psychostick. Like that whole thing, like I listened to that after it happened for like a week straight. Like I would
so good.
I would just vibe out to it. And I'm like, yeah, and then everyone's having.
It was just in my head, man. It was stuck in my head.
Yeah, it was an earworm, but that whole thing and it's so distinctly Murph, and I really like too that with the live streams you're able to see how what's the word I'm looking for? How like important of a part of the operation he is, because he you know, because you guys, there's the four of you, and then there's Murph and his voice and the little hot dog and everything. If you watch one of your live streams, it really illustrates that it's like a team effort, like Kooks, Murph, you guys, and there's like so many moving parts. Now, I'm gonna ask this question is kind of weird. When did y'all start delegating responsibilities in like a very regimented fashion? Because that's something that I always was, I always like would watch how you guys operate with the spreadsheets and with the dry erase board and whatnot. And just thinking to myself, okay, here's this band that's like goofy, but they are so fucking organized, and a bunch of educated gentlemen coming together and delegating responsibility and being very business minded and organized in their approach to everything. When did that start? Because it seems like at the very beginning of the band, it was like a little less organized, but
way less organized.
But now it's like this delegated machine. I want to know about that.
So I appreciate that, because from our perspective, like you said, creative people being hard on themselves. From our perspective, it's such a mess. Like it's a work in progress.
I disagree.
For sure. But like we're always striving to get better at it. But you know, since we're in the middle of it, we perceive it as being like, oh my God, we screwed up all this stuff. Like it was so disorganized, you know, that kind of thing. But
that's crazy.
Objectively, like obviously we're much better off now than we were even just a couple of years ago. But to answer your actual question, I'm not trying to be a politician and change the question, but
no.
To answer your actual question, I would think that maybe we started developing a stronger sense of organization around the time that we stopped working with Rockridge. We got the contracts back and we started ordering CDs for ourselves. So that was around 2017, maybe.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the actual dates on the contracts and whatnot, but around that time, we started just taking responsibility more so on the business aspect, and also we've tried to make it really clear what are our individual strengths. So rather than just delegating blindly, it's really important to know your individual strengths. And so in 2017, Maddie had really started embracing the merch side of things rather than like whoever's available, do merch.
Right.
Because he is such a good people person. He can have those interactions and he's so good at it. He just thrives.
Oh yeah. He comes alive.
Yeah. So he embraced that and it just became one of his primary roles on the business side of things, you know, completely separate from the music, of course. And then around the same time, that's when I had wrapped up my master's degree. And so I started taking a heavier role in the tour manager position. So I was like, yeah, I'll try it out. I'll try to be tour manager. And so in 2017, after I graduated, I had a lot more time, obviously, a lot more time in order to participate more on the business end of things. So I took over as TM. Maddie focused more on the merchandise side. And then like all of us, we all have different personalities and we complement each other, but we also have our individual strengths. And so we divided it up a lot smarter starting around then, I would say.
Yeah, and now with the advent of like the pandemic happening and you becoming like a multimedia entity, because like Psychostick isn't just a band, you stream, you do all these music videos. So it's this multimedia like content engine is the way I kind of look at it at this point. Like not only you're a touring band, you make music, you record music, but you're making videos and you're streaming constantly. But I feel like even now there's more responsibility to be delegated to, like Josh is on the audio side of things, and then Rob is on the tech side of things, like with networks and stuff that I don't even really know about. It's just crazy to see it all work, and like from an outside perspective, like objectively from me, it seems like it was a kind of a seamless transition. Like I know there was some hiccups in the beginning, but as far as you going from being a touring band to like this like full band on Twitch streaming entity, it was really impressive. So
thank you for that. It's actually a little more nuanced than anyone really realizes. And what happened in 2019, Rob and Josh, I would say, like those two guys specifically, really wanted to try out streaming and just experiment with it, because they were kind of thinking like we can just play in one place and play for everybody, as an experimental, we had never seen it really done before. And so a couple of us, I was really resistant to the idea at first, like, wait, streaming? That's not a real show, kind of being, kind of being snarky about it a little bit. I wasn't trying to be snarky, but I'm sure that's probably how I came off. Just like, I didn't think it could work. Like, I just didn't see how that would work.
You're being old about it.
Yeah, exactly. But Rob eventually just kind of, not literally, but it was just shaking us, just like, let's just fucking try it. So we tried it out. Like, okay, we'll try this silly thing. And we tried it a few times on, I think it was on several platforms, but we tried streaming in 2019 and it was okay. Like, I just don't think that we understood how to do it well just yet. And so we had a little bit of experience doing that. And then when 2020 hit, and then everything just went fucking crazy and all the bands are, canceling tours and everything, we're like, all right, well, let's revisit that idea and try this out. And it was just a really big thing, like right from the beginning. Obviously, we're not a huge Twitch channel or anything like that, but for us, being able to have a few hundred, sometimes a few thousand people watching, whatever the numbers might be, like that was amazing.
Yeah, totally.
And so that was because Rob and Josh and then Murph too, like they were just like, let's just fucking try it, and even I was resistant at first, but they demonstrated to me like, you're wrong, dude. Like we gotta at least give it a shot. And so I was wrong, like they were totally right. They had this fantastic intuition. And then because we took those steps in 2019 and experimented with it for a bit, we were in a much better position to do it well in 2020. So that's why when we started off in 2020, it wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but we had taken all the really challenging things, like we'd already overcome those steps. So all the other bands, if they were just starting off in 2020, they hadn't gone through all that yet. So we already had a step ahead of quite a few bands before the streaming thing became more popular.
It was funny because I remember having a conversation with Maddie, and he was like reluctantly explaining not touring as much and starting to do the streaming thing. Like it was a conversation that was already in place with your camp. And I just remember thinking to myself, like being like, why would anyone do that? But
that was my thought too, man.
But it's crazy because literally streaming saved my ass in 2020. Like when I was stuck in Long Beach and I couldn't go anywhere or do anything. And next thing I know, I'm like, I'm fucking around online. And it's funny too, because like regardless of viewership, that's something I had to convince myself of, even with this podcast thing and with the streaming thing. Is like even like a number on a screen is an actual person, unless it's a bot. But you're actually reaching and connecting with human beings, even if their face isn't right in front of you. So I have to sometimes tell myself that, even if I'm streaming and there's like 10, 15 people watching me, it's like those are 10, 15 people that decided like this is what I want to be doing with my time right now. And that's valid and that's important. And you need to respect that these people are giving you their attention. It's huge. But yeah, I was like kind of a grandpa about it too. I'm just like, oh, why would anyone want to do this? But then we're thrust into this situation where it's kind of like, well, we have to augment our business model or not survive this year, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing I noticed with a lot of bands, like other bands that I look up to and I respect and I love their music. A lot of them were just kind of complaining about it. And I was like, come on, guys, at least try something new. But that's me having already been through those trials and tribulations.
The complaining process.
Yeah. You got to get through the complaining process first, I guess, and then you can grow and then you can experiment. But that's fine. You can start there, but then you got to try new things if you want to succeed and you want to grow your business and grow your art and everything else. But I did a lot of the same stuff. I just didn't do it publicly. So I think that was the flaw with a lot of bands just complaining about, oh, we can't tour, we can't make any money. It's like, can you try other stuff? Why can't you try other stuff?
Right.
You got to be open-minded.
So you already had, it's funny because in 2019 you already had like all of those conversations, but yeah, like you said, they were done in private, and then you already kind of started streaming. And that's what I noticed is I remember you guys fucking around on Twitch pre-pandemic and me just being like, like kind of scratching my head about it. And
it
now,
was definitely odd at first, but we've gotten a little bit better at it.
Oh, I think as far as full band live streams on Twitch, it's like Glowstick Willie and you guys, and I mean, what other full bands are on Twitch? I really can't.
I've seen a couple other bands, like Code Orange did a performance, but it was a lot more just a performance being recorded.
Right.
And then Under Oath did the same thing. It was a performance being recorded. Whereas when we're on Twitch and YouTube and things like that, we actually address the audience. We
it's
talk
live
to them, and there's a chat, and we all see the chat right there. That way, it's a lot more participation and less of a classical, show in person. So it's a different thing for sure.
Yeah, it's way interactive, and I think that's the appeal of a lot of the streaming thing is that if you throw a comment up there, if you toss a dono, like there is actual interaction happening with the person you're watching, and you guys definitely provide that. Same with Glowstick Willie. It's like, but you see a lot of like solo acts, and you see a lot of people doing like looping or people like making music in their bedroom by themselves. But as far as like a full band production, it's like
it's hard.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm sure there was a huge learning curve as well for like Murph and Rob, like and Josh and everybody,
Yeah, it's funny because when we started doing performances and streaming them, it took Josh a long time to get the audio really dialed in. So we've had a couple guests on our streams. We've had Downtown Brown, obviously. We've had Lords of the Trident play with us, and it was really funny with Lord specifically. Ty, their main guy, Ty, he was asking about switching out drums. I'm like, hard no. We're not switching out drums. You're more than welcome to come and play on our stream, but you got to play my drums. That's the only stipulation. And they were really cool about it. And so when you guys came and Phil played on my drum set, the second time you guys were on the stream and I wasn't playing drums, when you had Phil playing and he's just playing my kit, it's like, it has to be that way. There's no way we're going to switch it out and make Josh go through the hair pulling event of trying to sound check on a stream.
No, hell no.
Way.
There's just too much work that goes into getting a good mix. It isn't like live sound. There's like so much that can go wrong, and
especially through the internet.
Big
There's
time.
a lot going on.
So hey, let's talk about. Okay, I have your book here, your first book, but I know you have another book. So let's. We have been chatting for quite some time, and I don't want to take your entire day, but I'm holding your first book, and
so am I.
Okay, there you go. We are both in possession of Dichotomies by Alex Dontre. But okay, so when in your touring career did you decide I'm going to go to college? Was that in 2010 when that happened?
It was.
Oh, here's the photo of us with Rustin and everybody.
Yeah,
right
dude.
Here. This is at the Blue Max in Midland, Texas, and there was queso at that show. And shortly after this photo, if you look to your right, there's Joe our saxophone guy is being held by Rustin. Rustin actually dropped Joe, like dropped him on the ground.
Yeah, he threw him. He launched him.
And it wasn't like on purpose. I think it just happened. Like,
I think he just like, all right, you're ready. And he wasn't ready. And so he launched him. He's like, oh, and then he landed on the concrete.
So what year? I'm just looking at these photos now. It's funny. I'm thumbing through this. I'm like, photos. so what year?
You're on the back, dude. Your name.
Yeah,
is
I
right
saw
there.
that. That's crazy. What year in Todd Smith from Dog Fashion Disco, and then a PhD. You have a few PhDs on here. Several PhDs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay,
Just flattering.
Now I'm reading but not saying anything, so there's dead air.
Okay, so to answer your question, when did I decide to write a book? Is that what you said? Or when did I decide to go to school? Or
when did you decide to go to school? And I want to touch on this, and I want to touch on your new book. So like we have to find a way to not talk for another hour and a half about all of this. Unless you want to like do a super long podcast, but I did that before, and I think it actually scares people.
You can break it into episodes
Part
if
1,
you want.
Part
I don't
3.
care.
No, I like doing the full nut because I'm weird like that.
So we just got to cut it off before we hit 2 hours, because if they see more than 2 hours, it's going to be like, all right, I'm out.
I don't even fucking know. Maybe people want to listen to 2.5 hours of two guys talking about stuff. Who knows?
Maybe.
Who knows?
Okay, so actual question. What was it you wanted to know?
Okay, so you decided you're in a like essentially a full-time touring band, and you're like, I'm going to also go to college. Like, what was the impetus for that decision, and how did you go about starting that? And yeah.
Okay, so I addressed that a little bit in the preface of this very book, actually. What happened was it's post-breakup, basically. I was with a wonderful woman for several years, and we broke up largely because she wanted someone who wasn't always on the road, unfortunately. And, we were still, it's not that we didn't want to be together. It's just she didn't want to say, hey, stop being on the road all the time, because that would interfere with my goals.
Yeah.
And so we just collectively decided, okay, let's stop being in a relationship. Let's just be friends now. And so we broke up. And that was obviously very hard, but it was the right thing to do. And because she's now married, she's super happy. Like, she's doing great. So,
yeah.
But what happened, though, at the time is in 2011, and I was already kind of toying with the idea of going to college to do something just to learn more. Really just, I wanted to know more about finance, because I realized I'm really bad with money. How do I get better? Oh, I take classes at a community college. Like, cool, let's do that. So after we broke up, I'm like, all right, I need to start a new project, because, it was a difficult time emotionally in my life. And so I decided that I was reflecting on all the projects in my life. All of them had to do with more than just me. There's like other people involved. And that's great. That's fine. But my band, obviously very interconnected with a lot of other people, relationships, that's other people, jobs would be with other people. So I decided I want to see what I'm made of, and I'm going to try and just see if it's possible to take a couple classes at a community college online while I'm touring, and just see how it goes. Just one semester. What's the worst that could happen? So I signed up for personal finance, and I signed up for math class. It was like an algebra class or something like that. And so I did that the first time in 2011. And I ended up like really enjoying it. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I'll do another semester. And then I took 3 classes, and then just kept accelerating. It's like, oh, you know what? I can get a degree. I'm going to get an associate's degree. And so, it just kept accelerating from there, just snowballed into whatever I am now.
And now you have a master's degree.
Correct. Yeah, I got my master's in 2017. And I was actually invited by Dr. Ray Forbes, the first blurb on here. Dr. Forbes, he's the chair of the business psychology program, the master's program that I took. He's the chair of that, and he must have nudged the provost, basically the VP, the second guy in charge at Franklin University, and said, hey, you should get him to do the speech at graduation. Obviously, they use a lot more large words. They use very intelligent, words when they're speaking, but that's essentially what I think he said. He's like, "Hey, dude, you should get him to do it." So the provost, the last day of my class, the last day of my final class for the master's, I'm supposed to be giving my final presentation for this class in order to get my master's degree. And I get an email from the provost saying, "Hey, do you want to give a speech at graduation?" I'm like, "Oh, fuck."
That's awesome, though.
So it is awesome, but I was like, all right, I'm going to talk myself out of it unless I just say yes and then figure out how to do it later.
Yeah, you got it.
So I emailed him back before the presentation and just said, thank you. Obviously, that's a huge honor. I'd be happy to do it before I even knew how I would be able to do it, like the logistics of it. So I committed to that and then came back, and Dr. Jones, she was my professor for that final capstone class. I was like, well, this just happened. I explained it to her. And so then we do all the presentations and everything like that. And before she lets everybody go and said, "Congratulations, you're done with the course," and all that good stuff, she's like, "I have an announcement, but I don't know if I'm allowed to tell the good news. We'll see if we can get a confession out of him." I'm like, God damn it. So I chimed in. I'm like, yeah. So I was asked to give the speech at graduation. And so that was how that happened. And I don't even remember doing my presentation. You think I would remember doing the final fucking presentation, but I have zero recollection of that because it was so turbulent. It was such an insane few hours of my life that my recollection of the actual presentation is not there in my memory.
That's crazy.
It's insane, dude.
I went to Japan once and I barely remember any of it. Wow. I remember I was there 2.5 weeks and I have like very slivery memories of it. But anyway, go ahead.
Whoa.
Okay, so Ray Forbes, that's the person who asked you, the PhD that asked you to do the speech, refers to your book as a remarkable first-person odyssey. Yeah, like sick.
He's my mentor. Like he's not an official mentor, but I could say he's honestly one of my big, the people I look up to. And I go to him when I have a question about not only psychology or anything related to that, but just like life. He's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. Like, you go into his office on campus, he has bookshelves everywhere, but then he's like, "Oh, look closer." And you pull a book out. There's another line of books behind those. And he's read all of them. Like, it's,
wow.
He is so well read. It makes me kind of, fuck, man, I need to read more.
Yeah. Well,
Dr. Forbes is awesome.
And it's one of those things where, especially like if you said you had a turbulent relationship, like to have positive male role model in your life and someone that you really look up to and respect, that's huge, because if you can't get that from your actual bloodline, the fact that later on in your life that you got that from someone that you really respect and someone that actually took you under their wing as well. I mean, that's a blessing, man.
He's also the guy, I fully agree. He's also the guy who, he doesn't push me to do stuff, but he suggests things in a way that you got to listen to Dr. Forbes. Like, if he's recommending something, you got to at least try it out. So he was the one who suggested, well, why don't you apply to see if you could teach at Franklin? Just teach some undergrad classes. I'm like, I have never considered that in my entire life. Like, it was such a bizarre left field kind of thing. But I'm like, well, if Dr. Forbes thinks I can do it, maybe I'll give it a shot. So in 2019, I applied, and I suspect he put my application on the top when it was submitted to. He likes you, all the people. But then I had an interview with Dr. Kelly Renner, and she's like the lead faculty of the psychology undergrad program. And all of a sudden, I'm an adjunct professor, and I'm like, well, this is super weird.
That's
so
awesome.
Now I'm teaching classes. It's crazy. It's so crazy.
And you're doing all this remotely.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome, though, because I mean, you went from here, you just like dipped your toes in the water, and the next thing you know, you're in the fucking water. Your whole body's in the water, and now you're like, there's other people in the water, and you're screaming at them from the dock. You know, I don't know if that's a good analogy.
I like it though. I like being in the water. One of the most fulfilling things about doing, teaching, especially, is that I can enforce the idea that you need to back up your claims with evidence. And that is just so rare these days in my experience with people. Like, everybody has something to say, but nobody ever gives any evidence to support their claims. So in my classes, that's a critical thing that I really try to drive in. Like, claim whatever you want, that's fine, but you got to back it up with evidence. If there's a paper, there's a study, whatever it is, don't just say studies say. That's bullshit. You got to have it cited. You got to have the information to back up your claims, because otherwise I don't give a shit. Like, this isn't Wikipedia. This is an undergrad fucking class, you know, like, you got to back it up.
It's funny because this day and age, a lot of people will say, "I did my research, bro." And that's complete bullshit. Yeah. Like, what? You saw some conspiracy theorists on YouTube tell you yada yada, and you're just regurgitating it? Yeah, sure. That's
exactly.
Does that
like,
really
everybody says go to Google. It's like, don't go to Google. Go to Google Scholar. If you go to Google Scholar, it's a different database, and it's only peer-reviewed research. Try that once in a while and see what the actual academics who spend their entire life studying something. See what they're saying, not what some bozo is typing out just because he has an opinion. Like, I don't care about opinions. I care about evidence.
So this is my question. Does the Google Scholar have a lot of information on the pandemic type stuff?
Absolutely. There is piles and piles of research, because that became like a primary focus for all these researchers. Like, oh God, this insane thing is happening. So here's an example. In 2020, there's a paper published in Medical Hypothesis. That's the name of the journal. It was all about the idea of, you know, when people were losing their sense of smell and taste, they're like, why is that? And their hypothesis, before they actually tested it, was that they thought that the olfactory nerve, which is the single nerve, you know, coming out, connecting to your brain that is exposed to the outside world, the olfactory nerve in your nose, that's the only one exposed, right?
Whoa, okay.
They think that as an immune response, basically the body was shutting that down, just basically burn the bridge, like destroy the nerve. It'll knock out your sense of smell, sure, but that means your brain is protected. So the infection won't jump up all the way into your brain. So that was the hypothesis. A few months later, one of the most prominent journals in the world is called Nature. Like, it's a UK journal, but if you're in Nature, you're a badass. Okay. Like, they are like one of the premier spots to publish. So they have a subjournal called Nature Neuroscience, and they did a very in-depth study about that very thing and demonstrated that, yes, this seems to be true. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that it's an immune response. It knocks out the nerve, and so you don't smell for a couple months because those nerves regenerate. They're one of the few areas of the brain that it's called neuroplasticity, but it's regeneration of the actual nerves. And that's why they lose, like, a lot of people lose their sense of smell. Like Josh, when he got COVID, he lost his sense of smell and taste for a while, but now it's very gradually coming back. And that's because the regeneration of the nerves.
Wow. And if you just look this up on Google per se, you wouldn't necessarily be privy to any of this knowledge. Is Google Scholar? Is that what?
Google Scholar. Anything I talk about, if you want me to send you the research, I absolutely will. But I'll let you know, like, the Nature Neuroscience paper is real in depth. Like, the wording they use is so hard to understand because it's not written for the general public. It's written for other nerds.
Right.
They're all a bunch of neuro nerds, and they have to have very, like, hyper specific wording because they're trying to argue something in the top journal in the world. So you can't be lazy with your wording. You got to be very, very specific. And that's why it's so hard to read if you've never read something like that.
Right. And the only people that would have that specific knowledge are people that are scholars and people that study that specific area. Yeah. Or
maybe journalists who are exposed to it enough to where they understand a lot of the wording. Those are the people who translate it into other articles that you might see in, like, The Guardian or Washington Post or New York Times or whatever it might be. Maybe they'll read the hardcore research and then kind of translate it for the general viewer.
That's crazy. And it's just so funny because these keyboard warriors that can barely spell, or they don't know how to embrace a contraction, they're like, I did my research. And it's like, no, you didn't.
Yeah. No, you did not. You did not do your research.
That's funny. Like, the way you just explained it about the neuroplasticity of that nerve. And I didn't even, I knew I was going to learn something today. I didn't even know that nerve A was exposed, and B, when I lost my sense of smell and taste,
Oh, you did too.
Yeah, to think. Yeah, because I got COVID for 9 days. I might have had it longer, but I tested positive and I was able to get rid of it in 9 days. But then there was lingering side effects, and one of those being when it makes sense now because thinking about this nerve regenerating, that's why as it came back slowly, and as it came back, like most of my smell when it came back, shit smelled like it was burning. It smelled like it was weird. It was like off. It was, and my taste and smell were augmented for a period of time before I feel like everything's at like 100% again. You know,
good.
It was wild. That shit was wild. But I will say that I haven't done any Google Scholar research on the vaccine. Like I'm just a guy, but I will say that
I have.
Right. I know you have, but I will say that anecdotally from getting the vaccine, I wouldn't want to know what it's like to have COVID without it is all I have to say about that. Because when I got it, I was pretty fucking sick for a dude that was fully vaccinated. And I was exhausted, and then I lost and my breathing was affected as well. So just to think about how affected I was by this virus being a vaccinated individual, like I couldn't even fathom like how much it would suck dealing with this thing and not being vaccinated. And then just like how do you convince yourself to be unvaccinated when you know that this thing could potentially kill you? Like it blows my mind.
Well, a big part of that is that in today's day and age, the way Google specifically works, and a lot of other companies too, there's something called the filter bubble. What that means is that anything that you type, anything you search, anything that you show interest in, they show you more of that later on. And so it reinforces what you already think, what you already want to believe. And so if you have an inclination toward one thing, it's just going to get more and more and more extreme. Combine that with the echo chamber, you're surrounding yourself with other people who think just like you. If you have an inclination toward conspiracy theories, let's say, and everyone else does too, and it's just getting more and more extreme because of that, and they all start telling each other, oh, vaccines are this and vaccines are that, like, of course people are going to be polarized because that's how we're set up by our search engines and social media and likes and everything like that. They collect mountains of data, and then they shovel all these ads and everything else at us and make us think that we know more than we actually know. So that's why that's actually happening. So get a VPN. That's what I'm really saying.
Right. It's a bummer that like actual facts aren't being promoted. Like why would the collective, people in power want to just push people's personal narratives back to them when they could push an actual truth narrative? Like, you know what I mean? Wouldn't that be in the best interest?
Two reasons. One is that I don't think it was on purpose necessarily. I think it's just a lot more like what actually happened in the last couple of years is a lot more extreme than anyone ever realized it would be.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was more just like, oh, people want personalized advertisements because it's more convenient. They didn't realize it'd become this monster in which people just continually are reinforced. This is what you think. So you just get more and more extreme because that's all you see. People who are polarized in any direction, doesn't matter what you're believed in. If you're polarized because of the internet, it's because you think that's correct because that's all you see. You're not exposed to other ideas that might contradict your opinions because you just don't see them. You're never exposed to that.
Yeah.
So that's why your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving who has like these insane ideas to you, he perceives you as being completely insane. Like, why don't you get this? Like, why don't you understand this and this and this? It's because his perception of the world, it's like a parallel universe. Like we're both using, the same search engines, let's say, but you're going to get different answers because you're on different platforms. They have different amounts of data on you.
It just, I don't know, it makes it all confusing.
It is. It's very confusing. It's very complex, but yeah, we got to get rid of the cookies. If that's something you don't want, if you don't want to be manipulated by your data and by your information, avoiding giving your cookies out by getting a VPN, which is a virtual proxy network, I think it stands for. Get one on your phone, get one on your computer. That way they're not just collecting all this data and then using it against you. Like that's when I see an ad for something on any site that has nothing to do with my interests, I'm like, yes, they don't know anything about me.
Yeah, score.
Well, they obviously know a lot about me, but less than they think.
Right.
So it's healthy to have alternative points of view, being exposed to alternative points of view. Because if all you hear is what you want to hear all the time, not only are you not learning anything, but you're never challenged on your ideas. How are you supposed to grow as a human being? So
that's a good point.
The echo chamber is not a good thing. Like it's not a positive thing.
No, and I feel like if it's a radical echo chamber on either side, it ends up it can be very destructive and lead people to. I mean, look at what happened in Kenosha. Like, we're talking about a clash of two echo chambers. Like, you got the crazy, right wing echo chamber where it's like, well, we need to defend our freedom from these looters, and then you have the radical left, which are like, we need to burn down the police station or whatever. And
they both think they're 100% right because their views are never challenged.
Right. And that's why when I was explaining that situation, the Kenosha situation, to Allie, who she is so busy with her business right now that she's kind of she's not exposed to a lot of the news. She doesn't know a lot of what's going on. And I told her very bluntly, I just said, it's messy. To be fair, I know a lot less about that than I know about vaccines because I haven't researched that. So I know superficially what happens. So, I mean, I will absolutely agree. It's messy. And it's
I don't know that
messy
much about it. So.
Because the people that kid shot were, had criminal records and they weren't, but it's, the thing is he was in a place where he shouldn't have been, and he was armed, and he was in a place where people were where they shouldn't have been, and they were unarmed, and the whole thing is just messy as fuck. And it's crazy. It's crazy to think that there's like literal war on the streets in 2020 where this, it was 2020. It was during the pandemic when this happened, but there's actual like combat happening on the streets of the United States of America in retaliation to, institutional abuse of certain people. Like the whole thing is just messy. It's
real messy.
It's super fucking messy. And it's weird just being a little kid and growing up, and I grew up in like a predominantly white suburb of Detroit, and just them teaching you, you stand up and you say the Pledge of Allegiance, and they teach you that Columbus was a good guy, and they tell you about
he was not a good guy,
right? And so it's wild, just like becoming an adult and then watching everything like unravel in real time in this, and we put ourselves in a position where we have our tricorder and we are constantly connected to all of this news bombarding us at all times, and it's a lot of it is messy news, and a lot of it is differing opinions and people fighting, and then the news cycle, there's like, MSNBC garners to this group and Fox News garners to this group, and everyone is, like you said, everyone considers himself to be 100% right in every situation. There's no nuance, and it's just, how do you stay sane? How do you stay sane when you're just being bombarded constantly with all of this shit?
The way I do it personally is I restrict my exposure to all that insanity because, just like I said before, there's that inherent negativity bias to the news. So if they're already biased, why should I listen to them? So I get a little bit of news from the traditional news outlets, but not a lot. Like what I strive to do is expose myself in a different way. And personally, I do that through a lot of like TED Talks, and I read a whole lot. Like I read a chapter a day just of a book. And so that adds up to like dozens every year, I read quite a bit. And so that way I am exposed to all kinds of different opinions and not just the same people shoveling the same opinions at me all the time. So that way, if I happen to start to believe something, it doesn't just get reinforced continually until I become this, hyper radicalized maniac. I can challenge my beliefs and I can rethink things. And there's like a joy to being wrong. And I know that's just not a normal thing to hear in today's world. Like everybody wants to feel right all the time. But if you learn something that demonstrates that you're wrong about an idea, about an opinion, there could be a joy to that because that means you're learning.
Yeah, you're growing.
Like if I learn something new from a book that I'm reading, like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, guess what? that means my previous belief has been corrected. And that means I'm a little bit smarter than I was yesterday. And it's a very different way of living than most people. I don't know about most, but a lot of people these days that just go to the same news source every single day, and they just portray the world as like this horrible place, just everything sucks. It's like, that's not realistic. There's more nuance to the world.
I agree.
So here's an example. In 1800, roughly, over half the population of the globe was in extreme poverty. Guess where we are now? Just a wild guess.
Okay, so what's the initial over half the population of the world? Was it in extreme?
Over half the population, yeah, more than half the population, extreme poverty globally.
Okay, where are we at now?
Less than 9%.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'll back that up with, where is it? Hold on.
He has the documentation.
This book.
Factfulness by Hans Rosling.
This book, yeah, it's an exploration of the world and just talks about 10 reasons why you're wrong about the world and why things are better than you think. He's not saying the world is perfect. He's not saying that, everything's okay and like we have no problems. He's like, there are serious problems in the world, but let's not lie to ourselves. Like that's what we're doing when all we do is watch the news. Like everything sucks. Like, okay, well, since, just a couple centuries ago, literacy has tripled. There's more women being educated than ever before. Just like there's all these good trends happening that no one seems to know about because all they hear is the negative crap from the news. So read this book, read Factfulness, and learn about how the world is not total dog shit. We're a lot better off than we think. And it's an inspiring way to view the world because everything doesn't have to suck all the time.
That's good. Yeah, especially with I noticed the social media echo chambers, a lot of memes going around about how life is pointless and how the world is dying and yada yada. And I find myself adhering to a lot of that, like when Allie and I talk about the prospect of ever having children, which is something we can't really afford financially, but always our other go-to reason is like, who would want to raise a child in a world like this? Which I believe that there's some merit to that line of thinking, but then again, is that line of thinking in my brain just because I expose myself to like constant negativity? Like that's the question,
Well, there's also more nuance to that too.
Yes.
A century ago, there were 2 billion people on the planet, and that has quadrupled in a single century. Yeah. There are way too many human beings, and that's not going to continue forever. It's going to definitely slow down, but when we're at 10 or 11 billion people, that is a whole lot of human beings. So if you don't contribute to the overpopulation, that's not a bad thing. I'm not having kids, so I can relate to that.
Well, there's more reason than just like, the world's a bad place. But also, I would be interested in reading a book that explains things very objectively in a way where it's like, hey, not everything is fucking terrible.
This is the one. Or if you don't have time for an entire book because you're a busy dude, he has multiple TED Talks. So Hans Rosling, everyone. Yeah, if you look up the TED Talks by him, like he explains a lot of this stuff with the same charts. Before this book existed, it was TED Talks. And so he has several of them. And he's funny. He's a funny dude. And he explains how the world is just more interesting and more complex than people make it out to be.
Ah, cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. Let's get to your so the first book, Dichotomies, is about your academic journey and it's anecdotal, it's stories, and of you being in a touring rock band and going to college at the same time.
Yeah.
Correct? What is I don't have your second book.
You don't have the second one yet? Okay, so here's the new one. Memory Hole. And it's called The Psychology of Dystopia.
Explain.
So hard left turn. So here we are in 2020. This book is what happens when you coop me up for too long. In 2020, I was reading a book called We by Yevgeny Zamyatin, a Russian author. And it's basically the grandfather of 1984. It's like the book that really inspired George Orwell's 1984.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm reading this book, and it's it's not nearly as refined as Orwell's 1984, but you could definitely see like a lot of really interesting concepts that have never been, introduced to the world of literature before. So it's not like everyone agrees on this, but it's widely accepted to be one of the original dystopian novels. And I just thought it was an interesting story. I had this idea, like, what if I wrote a book exploring the psychology of it? I could talk about We, which is from the 1920s. I could talk about Brave New World by Aldous Huxley from the 1930s, Orwell's 1984 from the 1940s. And I had like this narrative, like every decade there's a new novel. Like that could be an interesting book. So in 2020, I wasn't ready to start writing what became my book, Memory Hole, because it was just, things were too depressing. Like fucking forest fires in California and people, demonstrating against, murdering of black people, and, nobody had vaccines yet. It was too dark. Like I wasn't ready to do it because it was too dark. But once 2021 hit and people started getting vaccinated, and, I started to see a light at the end of the tunnel, because we're still in a pandemic for sure. But I started to see some optimism about the world. I was like, all right, I revisited the idea, and I thought it'd be really interesting to write just one chapter about each book and focus on a different theme for each one. So in February of 2021, I wrote the chapter for We, and that was all about like classical conditioning and free will and stuff like that. And then the next chapter was on Brave New World, and I talked a lot about addiction and things like that, because they were addicted to soma in that story. Yeah. And then I got to 1984, and I started talking about persuasion techniques and propaganda. And I talked a lot about how people communicate, and our ability to communicate is very degraded now with like memes. It's like there's no subtlety whatsoever. It's just, I'm trying to outmaneuver the next person by being snarky. It's like there's more to the world than, just simplifying everything into a nasty meme to try to shame the next person. And so that was that chapter. And it not very quickly, it took me half a year, but I started writing chapter after chapter, and I like had half a book, a couple months in. I'm like, this is going somewhere, until I got to the 1980s. That's when I started, my next one up was The Handmaid's Tale. It's like, fuck, dude, I can't not write about The Handmaid's Tale. That's like a staple in dystopian literature, but it's so fucking dark, man. I don't know if you've read that particular book, but I went through it again, and I started reading it again. The TV show is really dark, but the book is just fucking brutal. Okay. And it's one of the best written books I've ever read. Like, it's a fantastic novel, but Jesus Christ. But yeah, I'm going through this again, and I'm writing notes. This thing happened on this page, and this is an interesting concept for this page. I had a little document, and it's like a page and a half of just comments on the book, having read it another time. And then after I finished reading it the second time, I just procrastinated for 2 straight weeks. I didn't even know how to start that chapter without coming off as just this misogynist maniac. So after 2 solid weeks, I had this idea like, well, they justified their atrocities by saying God said I could do it, so I'm going to do it. So why can't I? So the first introduction to that world, each chapter I introduced the world from their perspective. So I argue the merits of that dystopian world. So that's why it was so hard. So I'm like, how do I argue the merits of raping women? Like, it's just complete insanity. But I think I figured out how to do it, and it's that was a changing point in the book. That's when I really decided, like, okay, I think there's some, pretty serious value here. It was a fun project up to that point. That chapter wasn't fun to write, but it was enjoyable once it was done, because I was proud of how I presented it, and it seemed to work really well. Yeah. And so after that, I feel like I became a better author having experienced that, because it was so challenging to write that chapter, that the second half of the book is definitely stronger, in my opinion, like just the writing quality. And then after about 6 months, I was done writing it. I'm like, holy crap, I got something. So I just went through the massive editing process and went through the whole thing and just tried to clean it all up. And realized the first couple chapters were just, all the sentences were way too long and way too complicated. I was like, how do I make this actually readable? So after I cleaned it up and everything, I got a draft going, and that became what you see here.
That's sick. So real quick, because I have no idea what A Handmaid's Tale is about. So, because I've read some of those dystopian novels. I've read Walden 2, and I've read Brave New World. I've read 1984, yada, yada, yada. But give me like a Cliff's Notes version of A Handmaid's Tale. Like what, I mean, if you don't want to go fully into it, but like what are the elements to that dystopia?
So Margaret Atwood, a Canadian author, she created this world of Gilead. And Gilead was basically a section around Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's where their home base is.
Like
basically.
New England.
New England. Because that's where she went to school. For her master's, she went to Harvard.
Okay.
So and that's also where like the Salem, really close to where like the Salem atrocities happened, just like hanging witches and shit like that. So she thought of this way to make this world of Gilead where a hyper-religious group takes over the government and basically enslaves women and uses their bodies to repopulate because there's a decline in birth rates and whatnot. So they basically strip women of all rights, and they are now the property of the commanders, the people in charge, basically.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, it's real severe. But one of the interesting things about the book is that she did not make anything up in the entire story. All of it has historical precedence, which is horrifying.
Big yikes.
Admittedly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's real bad. But there's things like, I know even right now we have this really crazy debate, with the Supreme Court debating like taking down Roe v. Wade. Like,
yeah.
That's horrifying because of the historical precedence of Romania. For decades, there was a dictator in charge in Romania that not only banned all abortions, but he did monthly tests of all women under the age of 45, I believe it was.
Oh
they
God.
had to either be pregnant or have, they basically like, why aren't you pregnant? They required that all women are pregnant. And if they weren't, they had to explain to the state why they are not pregnant. And they were required to have 4 children apiece.
Oh my God.
And that resulted in a massive overpopulation of abandoned children. And so there were hundreds of thousands of children in these decrepit orphanages with severe maltreatment and severe just mental issues and developmental issues because there were not enough people to take care of them. So there's a clear distinction. Like, that's what happens when you not only ban abortions, but you force women to have kids. That's what happens. And that's the direction that she saw happening in the 1980s.
Right.
And so now I see this thing with, they're trying to ban abortions again. I'm like, read a history book, guys. That's not a good idea.
Yeah, 40 years later, like Jesus.
Yeah. So that's what that chapter is about. And I go hard on the Catholic Church because fuck them. Specifically the rapists.
Right, right.
I'm not saying all Catholics are bad. I'm saying rapists are bad.
Yeah.
That's obviously, like, why is that even? Anyway. Yeah, that's what that story's about.
Well, that was a really good explanation, and that entices me to read that one. I need to I need a copy of your book because I'm interested. Like, I've always like had a thing for dystopian novels. Clockwork Orange, Burgess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember reading all that stuff in high school, which is it was cool. And I talked about in one of my other podcasts, I think it was last week, I talked about how I grew up in this predominantly white suburb of Detroit, but the school system was really good, and we were doing modern thought and literature, and we were reading these novels and doing papers on them and actually like dissecting a lot of this stuff, which was it was cool because one might think that growing up in this little nook of Detroit and we were just a bunch of like kind of privileged white kids, that there would be what's the word I'm looking for? Like ignorance, but really the town I grew up in, it was like a diamond. It was kind of cool because other cultures were really celebrated, and everyone was like educated to the point where they realized that being racist was kind of stupid. Like, I didn't deal with racism in my high school. I dealt with some like crazy misogyny. I dealt with some like there was definitely some locker room talk, like when I was on the football team, that was like super fucking rapey and shitty. And I didn't realize that, there was a lot of toxic masculinity, especially with the type of people I surrounded myself with and I didn't realize that was even a thing until like way later. There wasn't really, and it was a different time. It was the late 90s. There wasn't really a full on like acceptance of people coming out as gay. Like everyone that was gay in my high school came out like after they graduated. Like it was a small town. Like no one felt comfortable coming out. But the one thing that I didn't really experience is like other cultures were celebrated and like there wasn't like these kids weren't fucking racist. It was kind of nice.
Good.
But it was weird. There was like one town over called Livonia where everyone I met from Livonia after I graduated high school, they all were racist. They were like mad racist because that city bordered a predominantly black city in suburban Detroit. So it's weird. Like we were in this little Pleasantville bubble where we were like reading kind of hard to understand novels and we were dissecting them, and we had good schools. We had like, it was nice. It was like a nice place to grow up, and we all were kind of, the kids were kind of smart. They all went to like U of M, or like I went to Michigan State University right out of high school. Like kids went to college. There wasn't really any violence. It was like, it was kind of nice, but
I'm glad to hear it, man.
Yeah, but also it was just weird because one town over, you had a city full of fucking racist shitheads, like shitty, like racist, homophobic, fucking like violent fucking maniacs, dude. Like everyone, most of the people I met from Livonia, it's just one town over from the city I grew up in Northville. They were fucking like some of the craziest people I ever met. Some like really volatile human beings. Not all of them, but the ones I met.
Yeah, of course, not all of them.
It was fucking crazy, man. The hatred in a lot of these people's hearts, just because the city they grew up in bordered, a predominantly black city in Metro Detroit, and then they come from this lineage of racial hatred because their parents are fucking racist and they pass it down to their kids, and it was gross. I kind of went off on a tangent right there, but yeah, I read Huxley and I read Orwell, and we read it all in high school, and it was, I felt enriched, so like, I want to read your book because I want to get back into reading. Like you say, you do a chapter a day.
Yeah. The way I see it is I carve out time for reading the same way I do eating or sleeping.
Nice.
It's like that's something that I do every single day, with the exception of, it's a holiday or birthday or whatever, maybe not, but that's what I do. It's part of my day, and it takes 30, 45 minutes. Like it's not a huge time suck. It's that habitual thing now. So I get through a lot more reading than I would have if I had just considered it an optional thing, because I frame it in my mind like this is part of what I do.
Yeah.
I do it. Well, yeah, I would love to have you read the book and get your thoughts on it, because I pull precisely zero punches. I like I said, like this is what happens when I get cooped up too long.
Yeah, I'm interested.
I go hard,
I'm mad
man.
Interested because I like a lot of the novels that you do chapters on. I've actually read, so I would be interested in diving in. And a part of me is thinking, like, if I set some time aside instead of like fucking around on social media. The one thing I'm very diligent about lately is like exercising. Like that's something I set time aside. And a lot of people will argue like, oh, I don't have time to go to the gym. It's like, you do. You just have to prioritize it. And
yeah, you got to frame it that way.
Yeah. And what you're saying about reading is like, okay, you like everyone has time to read. You just have to prioritize it. Like 45. I mean, literally you take dumps longer than 45 minutes some days. I mean, I don't know. Some people do maybe.
It's just, what do you value? If you value reading enough to do it every day, then make a habit out of it the same way you do exercising. I mean, if you have time to be on social media, Well, what you could do is, if you really like going on social media so that you can be enraged by what other people are saying, if that's your thing, maybe allow yourself to go on social media after you read a chapter. Say, all right, I'm going to read first. And if I read a whole chapter, then my prize is to go into the cesspool of social media.
Yeah, like, good job, me. I'm going to become enraged now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's funny, dude. That's your reward.
Or just take whatever you learn and you can enlighten other people, maybe. I don't know. Do you do you.
Yeah, I'm beyond. I remember there was a point during the pandemic where I was very opinionated about things. And now I just feel like everyone is trying to possess some sort of moral high ground with everyone else. It's just getting to the point where I don't want to add to that. I don't want to get. I just want to get on there and post something stupid and leave. You know.
Here's the thing. Not everybody. A large amount of people are trying to convince other people what I think is right and what you think is wrong. But that's not going to convince anyone of anything. So they're wasting their time. The way to do it is to ask questions. If you strongly disagree with someone, ask them a question. Find out why they believe it. Maybe find some middle ground. If you can agree on most things, but you have a strong disagreement about that one extra step, okay, well, this is where we both agree. And that way they respect your side too, because you're demonstrating that you value them enough, you respect them enough to at least consider what they think, but you still disagree with them. It's like, okay, well, why is that? And then they become curious rather than mad, you're wrong, and they don't listen. Like, why not approach it that way? Approach it to where you're demonstrating that you respect other people first, and then ask questions, find out what they think, and then have a discussion, maybe a debate even. But that way you're not starting off, everyone's already at war. Right. You're never going to solve anything now.
I believe that would require someone being able to respect someone outside of their perspective echo chamber. You know what I mean? Like, that's tough because everyone's so convinced that they're right. To have respect for the other side, and even just a one-on-one conversation, that rarely exists. You know,
it's hard because I would say almost. I hate to say this, but it's almost impossible on social media because you're not face to face. If you're in person with someone, you can have a real discussion, and they're not just trying to one up you, and they're not just trying to impress other people by how snarky they're being. So what is the point of arguing with people on Twitter? I just don't see any upside to it. It just seems like a total waste of time to me.
Yeah, me too, man. And
if you disagree, I respect your opinion, so let's talk about it. Why don't we discuss it rather than arguing about it? You know,
you're a rare bird, Alex. You're a rare breed of bird. Yeah.
That said, I have very strong opinions, but about a lot of things. But that doesn't mean that I am. In most cases, it's not something where it's like I believe this no matter what. It's like in most cases, I'm like, all right, well, if I'm wrong, okay, fine. Demonstrate to me how I'm wrong. Let's see the evidence. Let's see the logical reasoning behind something. I'm willing to be wrong. That's totally fine. I know a lot of people just hate that idea so much because it makes them less valuable as a human in their eyes. But
no,
being wrong is a very good thing because that's how you learn.
Exactly. And I did my research. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you did your research, then cite your references. How about that?
There you go, man.
How about that?
And on top of it, I don't respect you.
I don't respect your shit.
I'm tired of your shit. Well, I have to go pee really bad.
Okay, so do I.
Yeah, this has been going on over 2 hours. So I did feel like we have a good chunk, but I really appreciate it. I'm trying to be more, what's the word? When you do something and you're on time and you're consistent. I'm trying to be more consistent with this podcast because I started this podcast in 2019 and I was going hard for a while. I did one a week for a long while, but then it got to the point where I started doing shit in the real world and kind of put this on the back burner. So I'm getting back into, I do these gigs. I work a couple jobs, I'm a busy guy in the real world now that the pandemic is seemingly dissipating a little bit, even though we're still in the pandemic. So I need to find out, how can I do all of the shit I was doing when I had nothing to do but online shit and live a real world life at the same time? How do you do both? Just don't sleep. You know?
Carve out that time.
Yeah, if I don't sleep and all I do is work on shit, then I can do everything. Right?
But sleep hygiene is very important too. So I want to point that out. Like, it's important to sleep. Like, it's good for your mental health. Yeah,
I'm mostly joking, but it's like you hear about those people that are like, you know, my grind starts at 5:30 a.m. and who's that? Casey Neistat, the vlogger guy.
I don't know that person.
He's just some guy on YouTube, but he did this chart of like how he organizes his time. And it's all charted out like to the exact, like pretty much he like wakes up at 5:30, I do a run, and then 2 hours of family time, and then I work on this, and he's like, and then eat. Like, he has everything scheduled out to the point where that shit would drive me nuts. But also,
I mean, if it works for him, cool. But the real question is that sustainable? It sounds like it might not be.
Yeah, I don't know. I found
might be like pretty severe burnout after not too long.
Yeah, I found myself like, if I do if I tour like a weekend, like we do 3 shows or whatever, I have to kind of recover from that, like my body, and like, so I've been giving myself time to relax and like do stuff like watch television, which normally I would beat the shit out of myself like mentally and be like, well, if you're not producing and if you're not being productive, if you're not working towards a goal, then it's time wasted. But lately I've been kind of treating myself and being like, okay, you earn this. You can watch.
I think that's a really good way to approach it. I like that a lot, because if you take care of the work first, and then you reward yourself, it's like a refreshing thing, and you can kind of relax a little bit, and you can be proud of what you accomplished that day and still watch your movie or whatever it is that you want to enjoy. I think that's a really productive and positive way to do it.
Yeah, but then there comes times where I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know. Lately, I've been playing the Final Fantasy games. I've been playing Final Fantasy. As per Rob's recommendation, I've been playing some video games. And for the longest time, I'm just like, why would anyone play video games? It's such a waste of time, yada, yada, yada. And I have to actually like convince myself that like, I'm enjoying this, and this is this is a nice departure from life, and this is okay. I have to like literally have that conversation with myself. Like, this is okay. This is okay. And it's weird because for the longest time, I'm just like, well, if I'm not working on a project, then I might as well be like eating poo or something, because like everything is terrible if you're not being productive.
I disagree with that mindset. Yeah. I think taking time for yourself and just relaxing prevents burnout in the long run.
Yeah. Okay.
And that'll make you more productive, for an extended period. So yeah, if you just work and do nothing but working all day long, you're going to burn out and you're not going to want to do anything. And then you're not being productive at all. So it sounds like the way you're doing it now is a lot better, in my opinion.
I'm trying. People tell me, they're like, you do a lot. Like, I had my friend from Chicago came up and played saxophone with Downtown Brown recently. He said, oh, you do so much. And it's like, I don't do enough, back to that whole, beat yourself up because, the childhood trauma really is why, is why I'm so hard on myself. But I'm also in therapy because of that. So yeah. So I reluctantly was like, I guess I do stuff. But on the same time, I'm like, I don't do enough. I need to do more. I need a Frank Zappa output. I need a Casey Neistat output. And I think that's something I've kind of arrived at lately, is maybe I'm not going to be this prolific genius, or maybe I'm not going to be like, when I die, if someone's going to look back and be like, wow, this person put out 78 albums or whatever. Like maybe I'm more of a normal guy, and that's okay. Like,
well, here's the thing. I don't know Frank Zappa. I never met him. I don't think he was even alive when I was born. But
he died in the early 90s.
Oh, the early 90s. Okay. What about quality of life? Did he enjoy his life? I think that's another question to consider. We don't know the answer to that because we are not Frank Zappa, but maybe he's a bad example. But the people who just are always grinding and that are always working so hard, it's like, okay, well, do you do anything for yourself beyond that? Or are you just miserable all the time because you feel like you have to continually output things?
Right.
So it's not just after you die, what are people going to think? It's, do you enjoy your life now? Like, that's important too.
Right. And I feel like because there's been a lot of biographies and movies made about him, and I feel like his actual personal life and his life with his kids was always like the priority was always work over quality time. And it's tough to say because like even in interviews with his late wife and stuff, she would say that the only time they saw each other every day was because they pretty much like ran the record label by themselves, was to like, they pretty much waved hi to each other as one would relieve each other from their shift. Like they would split up the shift and they would split up each day between the two of them. And then Frank would like just write music for the whole other. He seemed like he was obsessive with work to the point where I don't know if I could enjoy his life. And now, so he's got this body of work, and he's this prolific genius, and he's this amazing musician, and he has all this amazing stuff. But there's a part of me that it's like, if I had the choice, I don't know. And there's no way to really answer this question. Like,
it's subjective for sure.
Absolutely. And it's like, if, I guess ultimately I'm just don't have the energy level to be like a Prince where I sleep 2 hours a day and I record music like literally 16, 17 hours a day, which is what he did.
Yeah.
Would I enjoy that life? No, because I get tired. And according to a lot of people that were around Prince, I guess he didn't eat that much. He was like constantly sleep deprived and starving himself. And then on top of it, he developed hip problems from wearing high heels all the time. So
my God.
So you got to ask yourself, like, prolific genius,
constantly in pain, starving, sleep deprived. Yeah.
But the upside to all that is prolific genius and world renowned musical fucking pioneer.
Pros and cons, man.
But this is the thing, is like, at what point in my childhood did I even toy with the notion that I was of the same caliber as any of these people that I looked up to? You know what I mean? Like, what put that idea in my head? Because I'm in all honesty, like there were points where I'm just like, I'm gonna be just like this guy, or I'm gonna be just like this guy. Like, I honestly was like, I'm going to die being of the same caliber as some of my heroes. And like, who convinces themselves of that? Is that some sort of like delusional ego thing, or like what makes someone think they're special?
Well, most people out there are overconfident. Something like 90% of drivers think they're better than average. And if you think about that mathematically, that's absurd, right?
Right.
There was a really famous. All right, one more story before you get to go pee. All right.
Yeah, I might just go pee here, but you won't see it.
There you go. You got the bottle.
Yeah, go.
There was a famous mathematician who, when he was still working on his doctorate, I believe it was, this is long before he ever became famous, he had attended one of his classes late. Like, he showed up to class late. So he's only halfway through the class, and he saw a couple equations that he had to solve on the blackboard. And he's like, oh man, I got to do this over the weekend. Okay. And so he wrote down the equations, and he set out to solve them. So over the weekend, he worked on them, and he thought, man, these are really hard. They're like more so than normal, but it was a few days late. And a few days later, he came back into class and handed it to his professor and said, all right, I'm really sorry this took a few days. These are a little more challenging than normal, but I got them both. And the professor's like, you did what? Those are unsolvable problems. Like, those are demonstrated on the blackboard as problems that no one has been able to solve, like the best mathematicians in the world. And so what that tells me is that because he did not have that limiting expectation, these are impossible, he didn't let that limit himself. So he set out to achieve these things, not knowing that he wasn't supposed to be able to achieve them. And that's why he was able to push through and do it, because he didn't have that expectation working against him the whole time. So if we all were perfectly, like, these are the expectations about my life, I can never be as good as Prince, or I'll never be as good a drummer as whomever, then we'll never achieve the things that are not expected of us.
Yeah.
So if I thought, I'm a drummer, I can't write a book. I'm a drummer, I can't go to college and tour at the same time. Nobody does that. Like, well, I didn't have that limiting expectation because it was just like, I'm going to try at least. And because of that, I've been able to do things that are interesting in my life that are not the norm, sure. But because I didn't, I didn't like torpedo my own progress before I even started. I just said, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try. Let's see where it takes me.
Yeah. And
so
and that is, yeah, God, like I that's fucking what I needed to hear because, because if you place onto yourself an unrealistic expectation, and especially like at an early age, you're going to end up spending years and years chasing something that if you don't achieve, that you're going to constantly, once again, beat yourself up about it because like, I was supposed to do this. I was supposed to do that. And the other thing is like, there's so many more things in life than just like playing music. Like I think it's weird because so many of our peers, I feel like get this all-encompassing identity that just revolves around like how many profile pictures on Facebook do you see of someone with a microphone or someone holding a guitar? It's like, does that have to be the all-encompassing identity because that's something you enjoy doing? It's something you do as a hobby or it's something you do professionally? Like that's all well and good. But is that who you are at your core? Like, are you Alex drummer? Is that, and you're not. I am, and I'm not. Exactly.
I am a drummer. I am a black belt.
Oh shit.
I am a guy who has a master's degree. I am an adjunct professor. I am a doctoral student. I am an author. I'm a lot of things, but no one of them is my whole life. Like I just like interesting projects. So why not do more stuff? I don't know. Like I feel like people stop themselves from achieving before they even start a lot of the time because they think, well, I'm this person. I'm a guitarist or whatever it might be. Yeah. If I'm a guitarist, I'm not this other thing. I'm a guitarist. It's like, well, why can't you do both?
Exactly.
You can at least try, Yeah. I don't see any harm in giving it a shot because that's how you can surprise yourself and achieve wonderful things that no one, including yourself, may have ever expected.
Hopefully I don't know how many holes are left in the golf course of my life. I can surprise myself.
Yeah.
How many holes are left, Dontre? Tell me. I
am not, I'm not a psychic. I don't know.
How many holes do I got?
A whole lot of holes.
I'm down with a whole lot of holes. I was just talking to my buddy earlier today, and he was like, man, he's like, I'm 27 years old. He's like, I never thought I'd make it this far. And it's funny because I told him, I'm like, well, I didn't think I'd make it to 30. And in February, I'm going to be fucking 41.
Yeah.
Dude. So like,
well, keep on surprising yourself, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's surprising to me because, I was living a very unhealthy, terrible lifestyle. I've been clean and kind of trying to take care of myself for some time now. But yeah, I really want to enrich my life with things that are outside of this like very specific set of skills, which is like drive around the country, play music. Like I enjoy doing that. I love being on stage. I feel free. It's my favorite. So go ahead.
One way to think about it is instead of having your comfort zone and stepping outside your comfort zone, I like to think of it as expanding your comfort zone. If you make it larger, trying new things, that are just a little bit outside of your realm and just little by little expanding it so there's more and more things that you can do with your life that are fun and interesting. All of a sudden, you're going to have all kinds of different projects that people will be like, wait, you do that too?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a fun conversation. And then you end up on the SUPcast and you're talking about a very wide variety of things.
Oh, yeah. We're just riffing. But that's why I wanted to have you on here because I know that you're a multi-dimensional human being and we could go into whole lots of things. And in fact, we could just keep talking, I'm sure.
Yeah, we could. And this is really enjoyable. I haven't had an extensive conversation like that in a long time. So this is a lot of fun, man.
Well, thanks for being on here. And that's the other thing I tell people is, 9 times out of 10 when you're conversing with a human being, it's these short little bursts, right? So to actually allocate a specific amount of time and have it be like at least an hour, is going to be more of an in-depth conversation than you would have with fucking 96% of the conversations you have. You know what I'm saying? So that's
absolutely.
And that's why I wish I want to do this more consistently because I always take something away from it, like a perspective that I didn't think of, and it doesn't matter who I talk to. It's like you said, like anyone you talk to, they know something about something you don't.
Yep.
So I find myself enriched from this, and I appreciate.
Me too, man.
And I appreciate your time, and I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're lifelong learners.
Yeah,
that's how it should be.
Let's keep being wrong about shit.
Yes,
and
I love it.
And we'll see how many holes we got left. But yeah, I guess we'll call it. Plug what you want to plug at this juncture. The camera's on you.
Cool. Psychostick has all kinds of streams coming up. We have a show in Milwaukee. We're playing on December 11th at the X-Ray Arcade with the Lords of the Tridents. I have a brand new book out called Memory Hole, The Psychology of Dystopia, found wherever they sell books. And I got an older book from 2019 called Dichotomies, and there's a nice little blurb from Neil Patterson on the back.
Yay.
So aside from that, Psychostick is also working on more music, but it's not going to be out till next year. So, wah. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, anytime. Are you guys doing full album, or are you going to do like, it's a little bit of a different format. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a full length for sure. Okay, cool.
It'll be a full disc if you're into discs.
If you're into the physical media. I just I don't know if I'm allowed to show this on YouTube, but this is I made this.
We'll just leave it at that. It's your tea.
I made this. I did something today. I produced. But yeah, thank you, Alex, for being on here, and I appreciate
Thank you.
And I want to read. Yeah, tell me how I can get Memory Hole. How do you get it?
You can get it from Amazon.com if you want to support that giant. You can get it from Barnes & Noble. You can go to the Half Price Books website. You can go to the psychostick.com/merch to buy it there. Basically, anywhere online. It's on the Target database.
Oh, wow.
It's all over the place. So yeah, if you want to buy it online, that's, wherever you prefer to buy books, you can get it there, and give it a read. And you can be enraged by my opinions.
No punches. Your lack of punches. I'm enraged by his lack of punches.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for being on here, bro. And I look forward to our next adventure whenever that might occur.
Me too. Have a great night, dude.
I will. I'm going to go eat food, and then, I don't know, there's so many things.
There's lots to do.
There's time. There is lots to do, and there's time, and I can be calculated with what I choose to do with it.
Hell yeah.
All right, bro. Well, I'm going to hit this button. Well, I'm going to stop recording here. And then, do you want to hit the Zoom button?
What Zoom button? Like
the X. Do you want to?
Oh, the end? The leave one?
The end. Yeah. I'll talk to you soon, man.
See you later, dude.
Later.
Good talking to you, man.
Peace.
Peace.
All right, there you have it. Alex hit the end. And so we just conversed. And this is the thing, too, is when I do these podcasts, I actually listen back, and I listen to the whole episode like after it comes out. And that's when it really sinks in for me, because everything we just talked about, it's a lot. We just talked about a whole lot of shit. And it's going to be ingested at a later date, maybe in like a couple days by me. I need a haircut because I got this ongo thing happening right now. You remember the It's Always Sunny episode where Danny DeVito plays like the art collector? If you look at my hair right now, it's a literal bowl. It's like a bowl all the way across. It's terrible. I need a haircut. So I'm going to try to get a haircut. We're going to do things with our lives, and I'm going to be consistent about this podcast. So thank you. If you're watching this, we appreciate you. This is my thing. The production of it, everything. There's no we. It's just me. This is just me. All right. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep talking. Hopefully, if you tuned into this, you enjoy it. I love you very much. SUPcast forever. Alex Dontre forever. And, keep being you, keep being awesome, and let's all find a way to take care of ourselves, but also like be productive and maybe not put unrealistic expectations on ourselves to be amazing. We don't have to be amazing. We just have to be human beings, which you already are. So keep with it. I believe in you, and I believe in me too, and we're going to do cool shit. All right? Peace. Fuck y'all. Suck my dick, and lick ass. I'm out. Hey, do you like this video? Do you want to see more stuff like it? Well, consider being a patron of my Patreon page, patreon.com/Neil P. If you pledge monthly, you get some perks, you get some exclusive content, and you get to help stuff like this get made on the monthly. Yo, check it out.